luck. You could be extraordinarily lucky and get heads 200 times in a row.
See, like, so you're woo-woo when it comes
You're not
to
talking about
crystals and things like
that
luck.
word
Luck can be
extraordinary
a
is
thing,
doing a lot of weight.
What is luck?
Racism.
What is luck? What is luck?
It's a woo-woo force. It's an energetic force.
It's an
At the very
energetic
least.
force.
At the very
I
energetic
agree.
force.
A woo-woo
Yeah,
force.
It's an
at the very-
energetic
yeah,
force?
At the very least.
I
Listen, I'm
agree.
a lucky guy. I attribute a lot of my shit to luck. That just means like I think God has my back. I feel like God has my back. I'm one of the chosen ones.
Luck is when you get heads 10,000 times in a row with a perfectly random coin.
I engaged with you perfectly, Lactoid.
Wait. Aiko, it's luck. You would agree that'd be lucky, right?
Yeah, I didn't hear the first part. I don't hear your question.
Well, no. Maybe this is
based on
good. Maybe you're gonna agree with me then. So it's luck. So you would agree that a sufficiently lucky person could get 200 heads in a row on a truly random coin.
Yeah, but the odds of that happening, you can calculate the odds of that happening.
Extraordinarily low. Extraordinarily low.
Extraordinarily low. And the odds that you calculate for 200 flips of a coin, right, would be the odds of you being right in that argument.
that I agree with.
Yeah, and every time you flip a coin,
debate coach.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what we're talking about, right?
We call that hook, line, and sinker.
You think it's fair?
I made this point at the time as well.
No. So, Lactoid, how do you know that something is random? Just on principle, how can you tell whether something is random?
I don't think there's any way to know for sure whether something is random.
Right. Okay.
There's no consistency.
Well, can I finish my argument?
consistency.
Can I finish my argument in terms of like generally speaking, as a casual definition, it'd be fair to say that something is random is unpredictable.
Sure.
Okay. Now, do you think it's fair to conjure up a hypothetical where the result is predictable and describe it as random?
I guess it depends on to modify, it depends on like what you mean. Like if you flip a coin, it's predictable that you will get heads or tails. Like there's two options that are predictable.
That wasn't hypothetical. You said
I know.
always
Hold
black
on.
people.
Well, right. That was the hypothetical. Hypothetically, right, if you flip a coin that's purely random, it's unpredictable if you're going to hit heads or if you're going to hit tails every time. But if 200 times has passed and you've hit heads every single time, it's also the 201th time is equally as unpredictable as any 201th whatever is equally as unpredictable as the as the prior 200 times.
The odds are always 50-50 in a vacuum in a coin.
Yes. Yep.
If you encounter that on the 199th occurrence, okay, would you ever describe, like, what is the more reasonable conclusion? Okay, that is, we're dealing with a random system, or there's something else occurring.
In reality, it would be that something else is occurring.
Yeah, this is Occam's razor.
Yeah, but the hypothetical was controlling for any dishonesty.
But it's not, though, because, again, it's a
It was, because I made the hypothetical, and I'm saying it does.
Contradictory hypothetical.
That's the ultimate argument, right? Is that if you agree with both premises, and what you're saying is you must accept both premises.
Yeah.
But what you're basically saying is you must accept contradictory premises, right? That it is both, it is both predictable and not predictable at the same time.
Yes, exactly.
No, but it wouldn't be. Come on, but you can at least you can fathom the idea of winning the lottery, right? Despite the fact that it's extraordinarily low, but somebody wins it, and there are people who've won the jackpot, right?
Yeah.
So if I tell you, imagine you've won the jackpot, are you going to argue with me about the odds?
I would argue about the odds if someone won the jackpot 200 times in a row, the same person.
No. Even winning it once, even winning it once is you have a higher chance of being struck by lightning. It is extraordinarily low chance. I'm asking you, if I say, imagine hypothetically you won the lottery, this would be an unreasonable hypothetical by your standards.
No, it wouldn't, because the thing that you're predicting is that someone wins the lottery, right? The odds of someone winning the lottery at any given percent is like 40%. 40% chance. I'm just making that up.
$2 coming in right out of the gate from A2 Keep on Trucking.
Right.
$2 just bought my Team Canada prop number 51 jersey. That's awesome. Let's go. That's cool, man. I really like that.
Lottery person in that country. I need to look it up because it just happened. It was just reported on today. And that person won $85.6 million and immediately resigned. So a reasonable person would look at that and say, We need to at least investigate to see. And also, that lottery ticket that he won off of, he had sent to him by courier. So
sure, let's go.
Again,
Yeah, that raises
the odds
eyebrows.
are overwhelming that this is not like now. It's possible that he just did that not knowing if it was a truly random card or not. But you would be reasonable to suspect that randomness was not the only factor in that case.
Sure, I would agree. Yeah.
Right. Therefore, you would be reasonable to suspect that structural racism is the more likely explanation.
In my hypothetical?
Yeah. And it's
No.
way more reasonable, infinitely more reasonable, actually.
Not in the hypothetical
Maybe
that
not
I
infinitely,
structure.
but pretty approaching infinitely. Yeah.
Yes.
Aiko, imagine what would I be if I didn't eat breakfast this morning?
Hungry?
Well, but I never skip breakfast though, Aiko. I've never done it in my entire life, and I never will.
You're not even addressing the crux of the point.
Wait, how is that fair? No. But right. So the answer to the question of if I didn't eat breakfast, what's the answer to that, Aiko?
That you're a liar. That one of your presumptions is not true, right? Either that you always eat breakfast, or
you're not
that you lied about always eating breakfast.
Do it correctly. You have to agree with him and give him his thing.
No, Lacto doesn't see the problem.
I'm just answering the question.
You're doing it wrong.
You can create a syllogism with false premises. You can do that. That's a thing that happens.
I'll go back to my original question. Do you think it's fair to describe a system as always producing the same outcome and describe that as random? Because that was hypothetical.
I think you can have a truly random system that has produced the same outcome.
I'm not saying whether it can exist. I'm saying
you cannot predict if you're sitting from the front, like in the temporal space. If you're sitting on the front end, you can't predict that it will hit heads 20 times because it's unpredictable.
What was the hypothetical? You said this system always provides the same outcome. Is that a predictable system?
No, I'm saying it has produced the same outcome 20 times in a row. I'm not saying it will. I'm not saying it. I'm not
that it always.
Yes, that was.
Yeah, I'm saying that it did always. I'm not saying that you can, like, if you insert yourself in the middle of it, you can always predict that it will.
Original one, and he said always. Like he said.
Yeah, and Lacto history.
Yeah, but yes, always in the sense that like it always has. Like in the past 20 times, it's hit the same heads every time.
Even Gibbs didn't agree with this. I don't know if he does now, but
Gibbs showed up at the end. He didn't know what was going on. What are you talking about?
But I can tell you this. This is real simple. This is really stupid because I don't think anything at all is random. Like whether or not you believe in God, not a God, like we know that we all are products of an environment. That environment acts upon us. And therefore, if you are trying to imagine some hypothetical scenario, well, you can't even do that because you're acting off. Like, how are you going to be able to think the same way as like a silicone-based life form? It's just not possible because you're going to act in the same manner as like the environment you were based upon. So there is no randomness, what I'll be arguing. Because, and then even further, I mean, now I'm not the scientist here, but based off my cursory understanding of science, everything in the universe follows some sort of rule or that is either we know or is yet to be discovered, and therefore nothing is random at the meta level.
Bro, how high are you right now? What the fuck are you?
Problem. This is just facts.
Some good ganja, bro.
He's right.
Tell me what I said is wrong right there.
It's not my position. I think randomness has to do with the observer, right? If you can't predict it, then it's random to you.
And if that's the ganja that's telling me,
but I do think that Gibbs is saying that what he's saying is you can say that this thing is random, or you can say that no such thing as randomness exists. What you can't do is say both. Yeah.
I'd agree.
That's one of the two possible answers to that. And Gibbs gave one possible answer. I'm kind of on the other side of that, but we're both staying within the constraints of what's possible. But to say that something is truly random and also always receives the same result, those are the two things that can't happen.
Are you guys fucking with me?
Even if we're talking about a smaller number, even if we're just talking about 8 coin flips in a row, which is still pretty darn unlikely.
I would never fuck with you, Lactoid.
Yeah, that can still happen, right? But what it means is that the odds of it happening are very, very low, right? So the odds of structural racism not existing and it being a truly random result is also exceedingly low, right? The odds are very much higher that it's structural racism is the cause, or some other element besides structural racism. There could be some other element too.
One of the hypos that I presented a world with white people and a world with black people.
Yeah.
What do you think the likelihood of this? Yeah. What do you think the likelihood of this being the case is?
My hypothetical where I answered God.
No, okay. With God, all things are possible. What? Sure. Yeah. I'm saying that what's the hypothetical that out there is one world with nothing but white people on it and one world with nothing but black people on it. What's the likelihood of that, you think?
I have no idea how to calculate that.
Star Trek tells me it's pretty damn likely.
It probably exists. It probably exists in the world, you know.
Bro, what?
Yeah, what?
With white people and
every time an alien race comes down, it's one group of people. They all look the same.
And they're Homo sapiens.
Gibbs can tell you there's more than one kind of alien.
Yeah, and they're Homo sapiens sapiens.
Wait. More than one kind of alien, but does,
I'm not saying alien.
Is it true that
technically,
each alien planet is homogenous?
They start out relatively homogenous, but
in origin at least, right? In origin. No, really? There are multicultural planets besides Earth?
Yeah. There gotta be, right?
I don't know. I'm just asking.
All I
can do is look at nature and I see like 2 tiny ants of a different color, and you know what they do? They kill each other. So I'm assuming that all species worldwide and universal wide are like that. There's gotta be basically racism throughout.
Actually, can I ask you a question? What's your problem with giving into like there is like structural or like systemic racism? What's your issue there?
No, you guys are so
No, I don't. No,
the whole argument was like, it wasn't about whether or not structural racism exists. I mean, GSU Gambit was arguing on my side, and me and him have had discussions as to the extent of structural racism and where it exists and where it doesn't. And I will accept that it exists in certain areas. The reason we were aligned is because we were both aligned against this theory that looking at an outcome is sufficient to determine that there has been structural racism. Because
you realize that when we make determinations, right? We never limit ourselves to only when it's 100% of the time determinations, right? We always know that there's going to be some slight exceptions to the rule, right? We don't wait until not just approaching zero, but we actually hit zero when we can like make a determination. In the field of law, if you did that, you got a business.
What are you talking about?
When you have to prove something in a court of law, you have to prove preponderance of the evidence, right? Like that's your obligation. And even in like
that's not accurate.
If
it's beyond a reasonable doubt, preponderance of evidence is irrelevant. You could have all the evidence in the world if the doubt exists.
We're talking about civil cases.
Yeah, in civil cases, it's preponderance. That's true.
I'm moving on to the next one. I haven't finished my list yet, but yeah, that's one of them is preponderance of the evidence.
I can address. I can address that hypothetical, right? So you would agree.
Well, it's not a hypothetical. What I'm saying is, even in cases of criminal court where the standard is much higher, you still have the reasonable doubt standard, which means that there's some doubt, right? Like if you wanted to say, what are the odds of a DNA match being wrong? It's like this incredibly low number, right? And so in the OJ case, the prosecution said, the odds of it being wrong are so infinitesimally small that you have to determine that OJ did it. I can reasonable doubt. Right?
I have the perfect response to this. So in law, you have to prove something called causation. Right. It's not enough to just look at. Give me 1 second. It's not enough to just look at damages, right? If you show up to court and all you show is like pictures of your damaged car and say, look at my car is damaged, so he must have done it. You're losing that case. I have seen, I guess I haven't personally seen, but I have heard of cases being thrown out because the attorney neglected to sufficiently prove causation. You have to prove that the person did something wrong, that thing that they did wrong caused the damages, and then the damages resulted. And so what me and GSU Gambit were saying is it's not sufficient to just look at the damages. You have to provide a theory as to causation on every inequity, on every inequity, and that causation needs to be tied to some sort of racism.
But the doubt has to be reasonable, right? So there are some potential causes that are so unlikely that they're not reasonable, right? So if you wanted to say that a fairy came out of the forest and caused the damage right at the same moment that this other car was in the vicinity, no jury would say, okay, can't rule that out. So I guess that person is not liable.
Correct.
Right. So that means you don't have to get all the way to 100% likelihood. You have to get to some level of likelihood.
Well, you could never.
It's not reasonable to assume it.
Agreed. You could never get to 100% likelihood.
Right.
In fact,
and
under
what
like
that hypothetical was designed to do was to say that if you had any number, no matter how small, you can just say, "Oh, it was probably random then," or it might have been random, and therefore we can't.
That was not the purpose. That was not the purpose. First of all, you really can't know anything 100%, right? There's this concept of solipsism. We all could be in the matrix.
It becomes solipsism. Absolutely.
That's
what I'm saying.
We could all be in the matrix. What the hypothetical was trying to show is that all it was showing is here is an example of inequity that is entirely caused by randomness. That is entirely caused by luck.
Again, self-contradictory. You can just
just roll with me for a second. Just roll. Here is an inequity that is entirely caused by bad luck, I guess. And I'm not saying that definitively proves that in the real world all instances of inequity are caused by bad luck. But what we're saying is it's not sufficient to just simply, and this is what Gambit was saying multiple times, it's not sufficient to just look at inequity. This is one of the things that happens all the time when it comes to the wage gap, for example. Look, women make less than men do. This must be because of some kind of sexism. All right, well, if you just simply roll with this sort of this sort of consequentialist, not even consequentialist, this sort of like starting with an assumption based on the end result, and then assuming that assumption is true, you get these weird realities, right? So you have the president of the United States saying, look, women get paid less per hour than men do. This is, and then the assumption there that's just sort of left hanging is it's because bosses are sexist and they want to pay men more. But then like you look into it, wow, has anybody considered that men work more hours, 7% more hours? Why wasn't that explained? Oh, and then look at like the kind of fields that different genders choose, and look at XYZ, and like you start like actually analyzing the causation of the wage gap, and you start to see all these explanations that shrink the wage gap significantly.
Right, and none of those explanations are randomness. So that's why I'm
not saying that the randomness. I'm not saying that the randomness, but here's the point. Even when you control for all the things that we know to control for, you still get like a 1 to 2% gap, or I think it's like 3%, 1 to 3% gap in income between men and women. Now that we've looked at the causation for everything and we can't explain this 3% gap, let me ask you, do you think that it's possible that this gap is caused by randomness? Do you think it's possible it's caused by sexism? Do you think it's possibly caused by some other thing that we just don't know yet, that we haven't fully explored? How are we supposed to know what this small portion of the wage gap is?
The third thing is the most likely out of the three that you just said, is that third thing. But that's not where we were in that argument.
That's not randomness either, though, right?
That's not randomness.
And that's why when I was talking earlier,
you cannot rule out randomness. You cannot rule it out.
Why when you were saying I was too stoned to even contribute a little bit ago, that's exactly what I said. I was like, there's all these things. I am stoned, but there's all these things.
I'm no matter what you
know about it, doesn't mean you don't adhere to these rules.
But Lactoid,
it's an unknown rule.
It might have
you cannot rule out randomness. You cannot rule out randomness to
maybe
explain
it wasn't that he was stoned. Maybe it was
randomness.
just random chance that Gibbs didn't answer the question that way last time.
Wait, you're right. I can't rule that out, but given that he just said that he was stoned,
I know. I was just trying to.
I'm beginning to form a hypothesis.
No, I'm stoned. That means nothing. You can't rule out people because they're stoned.
In fact, I think we should give them more credence. Whatever. That's the word we're looking for. Whatever the word is, that's what we should be. They're more credible.
I think you should get credits.
My mind is open to more ideas than you are, Lactoid. That's how it works.
It's too close.
Is that what it does? Tight. Makes you open-minded? Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I'm pretty close-minded, so
there are studies.
Maybe I should do. There are studies. Give me a study. Give me a study that you
right here. I'm living proof.
See, I think pointing out all those other factors that might explain it, other than randomness, would have served your argument much better.
Could it
going
be
to randomness was the
reason why we
because I agree with you on those alternate explanations.
Yeah. The reason,
we debate this all the time. We talk
the
about
reason why we're using luck. The reason why we were using luck is because it's very easy to understand in a hypothetical. Like you would agree that it could be the case. No, for sure.
We proved that luck is difficult to understand.
No, it's not. It's not difficult to understand. You would agree that when you look at two people, one person makes more than the other. You would agree with me that it could be because one person just lucked out and made more money.
Ori, let me ask you. Of all the classes that you took, I don't know what your experience was, but I was a psych major. Of all the classes that I took, the hardest one for me was stats. And it was because I had such a hard time grasping randomness, right? Like what you could attribute to randomness and what you could attribute to other things. I just didn't understand the math. And, I took pre-cal, I took number theory. There's a bunch of math classes I took, and it was stats that kicked my butt.
Yeah, stats is exceptionally difficult.
It's because I think maybe I'm just dumb, but I don't understand. I really don't understand statistical probabilities.
I like stats. That was my favorite of the
Here, let me ask you this: do you think it's
I
random?
liked it too. It was a lot of fun, but I couldn't understand it. I mean, I understood how to determine whether or not a particular study was valid or not, but I didn't grok it. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't, like in my head, get it. I could do the calculations to get at the result, but that's kind of different than understanding like intuitively.
So let me ask real quick. Rousseau, I think, used the term lottery of birth. Do you guys think that you think it's like random or luck that you were born into a rich family?
Okay, so I was going to bring this up earlier because we do a lot of work with the veil of ignorance, you know, John Rawls. And he talks about designing a world in which it is random where you will be placed or born. Like imagine you're outside of the universe. Maybe you're in like in Plato's Republic at the end where you die and you get to be reborn after spending some time in heaven or hell, and you get to come back and you get to but what you cannot choose is where you exist in the world. That's part of John Rawls's like thought experiment. He says if you don't know where you will live, you don't know if you're going to be rich or poor, gay or straight, you don't know if you're going to be trans, you don't know what country you're going to be in, you don't know any of that stuff. If it's truly random where you'll be born, what kind of society would you design so that no matter where you live in it, you would have like a good chance?
Wait. Something can be truly random. You just said.
Yeah, but no. That's what somebody else said. What I said is things can be random.
You're saying it's not random.
You. Like if you don't understand the probabilities of something, then it's random to you.
Hey, wait. But you would agree with me that it's random if you'll be born into a rich family, right?
Right. It's random. Right. From the perspective of the person who's being born, which is what the John Rawls thought experiment is, it's totally random where you're going to be born. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, totally random. I agree.
But it's not random.
Yeah, you know, I remember before I was born.
No, it's not random like from a universal standpoint. If like from the omniscient standpoint of God, like we know like how cell division works. Like obviously it's not random that one cell is going to be born to some other mother, right? But we're talking about from you. You don't know all that stuff before you're born. There's nothing that you have done. You don't choose your parents.
But
we can agree on that, right?
Well, hold on. I agree with Sam. Go ahead. Sorry, Brian.
No, you go first.
I mean, I agree with Sam Kinison on this. Before I walked this shitty earth, I was a being of light. I knew neither happiness nor sadness nor pain nor suffering. And then my parents had to fuck and bring my ass down here.
And
I have no choice in that.
It's fault that his parents fucked that day, right?
Yeah. Hold on.
I agree with Sam Kinison that we didn't choose our parents. We didn't choose to be born. And therefore, randomness is the only thing that matters.
But this only makes sense from a religious perspective, right? This only makes sense if you start with, right, well, there was a soul, right? And then I come down into a random body, right? From the perspective, there is no perspective.
Of life,
like,
you can think of that as a metaphor,
because
you don't have to believe it. But the fact is, you did not choose to be born.
No,
you agree with that, right?
Sure. But that does. I'm like addressing. You guys are like just stating, you and Lactoid, right? That this is random, and this is like a weird way of putting together. This seems like a category error as to like what we apply the term random to, right? Like it's not as if my consciousness is like wholly separate from my body, and that my soul, whatever.
There
right?
is no consciousness, is the point, and therefore it's random to you. Because you don't have the ability.
You keep using this term.
How is it random to me? Does that?
You keep using this term "random" to you, and I feel
it's
like
just random.
Because it's just random, or there is no randomness, right? Because you're going, okay, it's random to you. Like if I go play poker and I'm playing blackjack, right? It's random if I can't do statistics, right? That's your argument that whatever card I get, but that's actually not true.
That's a really good metaphor.
And this is actually why this is actually a false metaphor, because there's still a statistical probability of what I'm going to get based off what's been played. Just because I don't know what those statistics are doesn't make it random. It might be random to me in that sense, but that randomness is just stupidity or ignorance. That's not actually randomness. There's a major problem with your little.
Okay, here's another metaphor that we all know about, right? Which is Lady Justice.
Wait, hold on.
Why does she wear a blindfold?
Real quick? Like why? How do you explain that?
I'm using your metaphor.
Okay.
So Lady Justice wears a blindfold, right? So that when she's judging a case, there's a bunch of stuff in that case that she's not supposed to pay attention to, right? Because justice is blind. So that case is random to her. But there might be people involved in that case at other levels, maybe people who, keep track of different things that some are and some are not supposed to be considered in that trial. And the case is not random to them because they know a bunch of stuff. Like, for instance, there are certain things that the OJ jurors did not know when they were at their court. And they said later on, if we'd known this, we would have ruled a different way. But there's a reason why they're supposed to be blind to those things, because it's supposed to be, those things are supposed to have no impact on the case. It's supposed to be random from the perspective of the jurors. Do you see what I'm saying? So making yourself intentionally ignorant, that's why John Rawls calls it the veil of ignorance. Making yourself intentionally ignorant to some of these outcomes allow you to make a more fair choice, because you can't bias your choice with your knowledge.
It's not randomness, though. Just because you're making yourself intentionally ignorant to something doesn't mean that the outcome can be created by something random. You're still
Random to
acting on a no. It's not. There is no random to you. You're still acting on a set of variables, whether you're aware of those variables or not. It can't be random in that manner.
But those variables are not supposed to have an influence over your judgment. That's the point. So that if you want to call it something else, you can call it something else. But from your perspective, you can't say that this was the cause because it's being kept from you as a juror.
It's ignorant.
So if I'm driving my car down the freeway and suddenly I can't see, it's not variable. It's not random that I suddenly drove into a wall. I drove into a wall because I can't see.
What's random?
No, it is because now you're choosing. Now your choice as to where you're going to steer has now become random. Your ability to choose where to drive. You can't drive if all of your choices are random. That Jesus take the wheel, right? If we let Jesus actually take the wheel, we're going to die, because at every single moment that what that car does is more random than if we have somebody who's in the driver's seat who's making choices that they can choose
if
from.
People were saying I was the one that was too stoned here. Y'all got
about to call us home, apparently. Yeah. No.
I just got more high. I'm joining you.
Well, yeah, I disagree. Like, the more you talk, Eiko, the more I disagree with your standpoint of randomness here.
Okay.
Like I
said, you can call it something else. I don't care about the semantics.
I think we should call it something else, because again, I think we're having a category error here, right?
Else.
We can call it Gibbs. Okay.
I do want to. Sure,
you have to have a Gibbsian veil on.
I'm just saying.
Gibbs don't take the wheel.
Well, I mean, look, when I became suspicious when Lactoid agreed with you, right? I'm like, okay, this must be wrong, right? So
what did I agree?
What
did I agree with?
The whole thing about it's random where you get born into, right? Like, that doesn't make sense, right? Like,
so you would agree that, like, you see behind you, like, from your eyes, right? Like, you are you. You would agree with that?
I would agree that I am.
Yeah. So do you agree that, like, it's like the fact that you were born as you and not as, like, some, I don't know, like, ultra rich playboy?
This is a
right?
phenomenological.
This was randomness. Like you could have been born and seeing from behind your eyes, except your eyes are now driving like a Bugatti.
What is you, Lactoid? What is you, Lactoid?
Lactoid
is you made up of all your experiences. Like, hold on. You is a person made up of all your life experiences and all this stuff, right? The only reason you exist is because X, Y, Z happened before, right? You can even argue that the you that you are now is not the same you that was existing 10 minutes ago. Like, this is
here. Let me ask you this. Classic hypothetical. If I can make an exact clone of you with every single memory and every single experience, like the memory of every experience you've ever had.
Totally different person.
Okay. Totally different person. Why?
Because they're cloning me.
I know that they're a clone of you.
They exist in the same universe as me. Totally different.
Quickest answer.
Horrible. This doesn't make sense with your prior answer, though. So I make an identical clone of you, and then would you? And then would you be okay with me killing the original you?
No, because they're two different people.
What makes you as opposed to your clone that has everything identical?
Here's what makes my clone. He's my clone. Even if we have everything exactly the same, once you have two separate entities, they become two things. The causation is the making of the second one. I don't understand how you can try to argue this is a random. It's dumb. One can't exist without the other. Come on, my son.
Right. So
Nissan.
you are agreeing that there is some kind of difference. Maybe you're not able to like really specify because this is a difficult question. And
I mean,
some
it's a pretty
people,
simple question.
some
I
people,
think
some
that
people.
you're
No,
trying to
it's
make
not.
it
It's not a
because
simple
you're just
question.
wrong.
You can't
There's
specify
there,
the difference
there,
between
there's
yourself and a clone.
I
stop.
mean, I already
There's
had
some
the answer before you
there's
finished the
some
question, 'cause I
people.
gave it
No,
from
no,
the
you
comment.
didn't. There's some people
Oh,
like
okay.
synth, for example, where synth's argument is that the you like the all identity is an illusion, right? And that it actually you're not experiencing yourself in the way that you think you are. You're simply like a machine that believes it's experiencing itself. It's like that. That's sense belief. I think that's pretty doom and gloom. It's possible, I guess, but we're rolling with the
What does
assumption
it do
here
with what
because
we're talking about right now?
because I'm explaining, right? If somebody were to offer me a clone of me and then kill me, I would not take that deal. This is the classic Star Trek transporter problem, because I wouldn't want to die. And someone might say, "But Lactoid, you would live. This is an exact identical clone of you." Prestige, Star Trek, but plenty of shows and movies that try to deal with this concept. What does it mean to be you? What does it mean to see from behind your eyes? If you make a clone, I'm not seeing from behind those eyes. That's the clone seeing behind the clone's eyes. I am seeing from behind my eyes. So it can't just be your experiences, because that clone has all the same identical experiences, all the same identical memory, all the same identical DNA. Every
Docs have
single
the same
thing,
experiences
down
that
to
make
an
you
atom.
separate Lactoid.
Down to an atom, they are identical in every single way, except they hold a different position in time space, right? And so then the question is, if you
You
could
got
be
it.
born, seeing from behind your eyes in the way that you do now, but to the family of a multi-billionaire, okay, super rich, ridiculously rich, you would agree that like the fact that you
It's not
Yeah,
random.
so
Like the minute they exist in space time, it's like at the same different position in space time. It's no longer random. Like the minute they exist, they have a separate identity or whatever.
actual topic at hand in a second here.
Do we though?
But
I just have one question for Corey, but you go ahead.
Well, sure, hold on, but I just want to attack this. I disagree with Gibbs here on that. Like, I think there's a continuity of consciousness.
Good way to get to the next
Sure,
topic.
it's a continuity of consciousness.
That's the best way to get to the
That's
topic.
not what I'm arguing. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's like.
I disagree.
I'm just saying you could argue that. That's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
my
I-
argument. It's just me.
Okay, so like, yeah. Well, to be clear, I'm not like each moment where like a new person. There's a continuity, right? Like the next second, I'm still going to have the still experiences and still tendencies that I still have now, right? I won't randomly have the tendencies of like a billionaire or a conservative, right, or any other despicable category. Like I'll still be me. But like, so there's that. But um to say it's random, I think what like whether I will be born or not uh would be random, right? In terms of like the even then it might even be pseudo random at best, right? But like in terms of like the specific sperm, meaning that specific egg, and then combining that specific way, to make my genetics and to birth me, right? Like, and that one night of passion. Oh God, like, but like that seems random, but not whether I would maybe have been like Grid's kid, right? Grid's has a son. Like that's not random. That I would have ended up there. Like that's like um yeah. It's to the and like it ties like with like obviously like our ignorance as to like how consciousness ties is tied with our body. But I think there must be some sort of like link there, because I think form like uh determines purpose and operation, right? Like um would I be the same person like if um uh, I was if like the if the sperm and the egg were had been damaged, right, by like because my parents had been exposed to some sort of chemicals, right, like the same sperm same egg, but they had been damaged in some way, right,
Yes,
and
wait a
something
minute.
came out, a viable child came out, but would that still be me? Like yeah, like maybe not, right, like I don't know, but like it's not random as to terms of like where my consciousness ends up. My consciousness could never have ended up coming out of Corey's parents' is a union, their night of passion.
You don't want my parents.
Yeah, like I don't, I just yeah. So I don't know. But so you want to say something to Corey? Then we can.
Yeah. So Corey gave a definition of randomness, right, which was predictability. That's something can be predicted. And which implies that there is a predictor, there is a person who's doing the prediction. So if you're doing this from the point of view of omniscience, right, which now I kind of understand where Gibbs is coming from, because if you believe that you are God, then nothing can
does.
be random, right? Because you can predict anything. But there are those of us who are somewhat south of where Gibbs is in the in the scale of divinity, who we can't predict certain things, or the degree to which we could predict it is so like minuscule that it might as well be zero, like from our perspective. And that's what we're talking about when we say something can be random to you. It's not that there's nothing in the force that you can look at maybe after the fact and say, oh, this person was born because this happened and that happened, right? But there is this sort of sliding doors effect where the complexity of something gets so great that it becomes virtually impossible, really actually impossible to predict it. That's the kind of randomness that I'm talking about. It's phenomenological. It has to do with whether or not you can predict a thing, which means we're talking about the abilities of the predictor. So if you want to say something is not truly random, what you're saying is somebody out there predicted this or could have predicted this. And there are things that we cannot predict. And that's what I mean by random. Now, maybe that's different from the way Lactoid understands it. But yeah, I absolutely think that it's funny that I say absolutely, because what I'm saying is there are no absolutes. I'm not saying there's no randomness. I'm saying there's no absolutes. And in other words,
there are
there's not
no
a mind
absolutes.
out there that can predict these incredible.
Yeah, but
incredible
again,
So Ika, you would
conscious-
agree then with the statement that anything's random so far as you don't have that enough information, right? So you're saying
Right.
there's at some point there's enough information that you can be given to make something not random, no matter what
So,
it is, right? Because
everybody knows that
everything
quote-
plays within a certain set of rules, right?
Everybody
Like,
knows
there's
that
no-
quote from Arthur C. Clarke, where he says that a sufficient amount of science will be such that it's indistinguishable from magic.
Right,
What makes magic is that it's random, is that you can't predict it, you can't explain it, right? And so if you were to give a ray gun to a caveman, that from the perspective of that caveman, it's totally random. Like Corey, as a scientist, might understand how the ray gun works, but he's not the caveman, and the caveman to the caveman is totally
I don't
random.
agree with that.
It's impossible
Yeah.
to predict.
No,
Yeah, I don't agree with
the more you talk about like the more I disagree that like we can
So who predicted that
it's
Prime would
ignorance.
exist before you were born?
I don't think you have to. You're just stating that as a stipulation. I don't think anyone had to have been able to predict my birth. I mean, I think it was. Look, I mean, if we're gonna be honest, right? If we're gonna look in the real world, I think it was predicted within the tomes of the divine text, right? That I would come down.
Yes, if you believe in God, that's
but-
true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you just
but-
talked yourself into theism.
But the point is that like I don't think that's
One way or
like,
another, it always comes full circle.
counts as
It is the
It's not-
evolutionists that point to randomness.
like I don't think anyone has to predict something for it to have been random or not random. and maybe all this is making.
Well, then you agree with Gibbs that there's no such thing as
well,
randomness.
yeah, that's what I'm about to say. I'm actually might be approaching that there really is no such thing as random. At least nothing that we
Congratulations
can
on your divinity.
construct. But no, it's I don't need to. But I don't need to. It's not that I need to understand the rest of it. I'm saying that like there's just a level of just because a system is like so utterly complex, I can't figure it out, right? Like once you shrunk it down to like the idea of like the ray gun, right? And
Right.
you know that appearing to be magic. One, I disagree with your definition of magic, but even still, with working with
What's Arthur C. Clarke's definition of magic? But yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I like that. The caveman just doesn't understand. It's a complex system that he doesn't understand. But that's clearly not right. And so we just scale that up to the entire universe. Just because I can't, or no known observer can understand its complexity, doesn't make any it random, right? Like it's a system that's working on laws, right? That has like interactions. Some that we understand currently, some that we don't, right? But happening on so many levels that we don't have the ability to calculate it probably without building another universe, right? To do so, but still, that doesn't mean any of
God's
it's random.
grand plan for my life. Yeah, that would be something that would,
Feels good to be on the winning side, doesn't it, Brian?
As always, right? Once you just like give in the gift.
I will
right?
see you
Right?
at Mass next week, Prime. I will see you at Mass.
All right, well
Wait,
then
no,
we
come
can.
to the mosque first.
yeah.
Ramadan's
Hey, that's
next
perfect.
week.
You can go to his on Saturday, and you can come to mine on Sunday.
Ramadan's next week,
Okay,
Good
all right.
Friday.
Go get high with Ali at the mosque.
That's why Ali's
No,
filling up on chips
you
because
don't
he's
get
got to
high
get
and
ready.
go to the you respect the Lord's house.
I've heard, I've seen. In fact, I was like over the last week, I saw a few videos featuring some Muslim women, and they were like super hot. So hopefully we can find that in your place, right? Like
Yeah,
really hot.
yeah, Muslims, Latinas, it's a good looking mix.
Yeah. Oh my god.
But they're gonna have veils on, Prime. You might not like that.
Sometimes not.
That's something that we Catholics did too. Like for a long, long time, is you were supposed to cover up when you went to church. That stopped in the '60s. But
Listen, there are
it's part
like,
of
there are cultural Muslims and secular Muslims. There are people who
Yeah.
are just like,
Yeah.
they were just born here, man.
yeah.
They just do the wrap, around a hefty quick wrap, and they're good to go. I'm looking for them. But okay. See what's under that motto.
With consent.
With
This
consent.
is why
Yeah.
they talk about the
Consent.
great Reformation at the church now, right? You see people like this going to church just for hedonistic reasons. I approve.
Women do
Okay.
look their best at church. That is true.
I'll take
Get
your word
trapped
for
with
it.
their husbands after their failed flings,
I'm gonna.
As long as they're mating and copulating, man.
Let's move
That's
on
all we're
to
looking for
the
here.
topic at hand. All right. And it's sort of in this ballpark, very obliquely. But before we
We
do
did
that,
kind of
hey,
come around full force.
everyone,
Full circle.
thank you for being here. This is a roundtable show. Monday is 8 p.m. Eastern. Once again, we had a little of a pregame topic there. I to be and to be fair, I didn't bring it up.
I'll fully take full blame of that.
Okay,
Like,
yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. You can blame Corey. I wasn't going to beat you up yet. I found another reason to disagree with you, but I was going to attack you again. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed that conversation, which was actually quite different from the ones we usually have, we don't usually argue on these grounds. Much more philosophical than we oftentimes get. Consider supporting the channel.
I like
Subs
that.
to channel. Give bits or give subs. If you're on YouTube, consider using super chat, and we can respond to your questions. I am on the lookout. Thank you. Was it Wolf Raza for following the channel earlier. Thank you so much. And if you haven't followed the channel, consider doing that and making sure notifications are on so you know when we're going live. Love to have you. Okay. So we are going to get started. The topic is last year police in a small Ohio town made an arrest during a drug bust. They accused a suspect of hiding drugs in their anus. To retrieve the alleged evidence, the police took the suspect to a local Catholic hospital for a body cavity search. However, the hospital staff refused on moral, ethical, and religious grounds. The hospital is now facing charges for defying a court order and have suffered other repercussions for this decision. Do you agree with the actions of the medical staff? What should be the limit of the state's ability to compel behavior? Should people be able to reject court orders because of supposed ethical conflicts? Should there be some sort of punishment when that happens? And if so, what would that look like? So yeah, I came across this article. Um, this hospital, like the staff felt that it's like it's possibly dangerous. Let's say like it was cocaine in a baggie, right? That was up his bum. They were afraid that doing a cavity search, we could possibly pierce the bag, and then it could immediately go into his bloodstream, especially through the anus, right? Just, straight to the bloodstream, and then he could just like die of an overdose. Um, and also that like because the patient also the suspect also refused. Like one, we don't want to perform medical action against a person against their will, and we got religious reasons for. I'm not really sure what the religious reasons were, but still, they don't want to do that. And they felt an acceptable compromise was simply waiting for him to pass, right? Like so, like he was guy stuck in the hospital, right? And they can keep track of his stool, right? So they're like, well, we'll just like see like his next a few stools and see if anything comes out. But the police didn't seem to like that at all. Especially, but they did have like I think according to the story, like a warrant, right? Like a court order for the cavity search or whatever. But they just refused to do that. So yeah, I wanted to explore like what can the state compel of us, right? Because I'm sure everyone here has a limit as to like, okay, this is too far. What can be compelled, right? But where is that? I think it's probably going to be very different for us all. And how do you justify, right, going up to that limit and not one step further? So yeah, we'll get started. You can opening statements and introduce yourself at the same time. So if you're Lactoid.
Yeah, I'm Lactoid. You can find me at Lactoid TV, where we go over all of the correct way to engage with hypotheticals. So today's topic here, we're going to be talking about drugs. Great topic, and really the limits on state power. And I struggle with this one. I struggle with this one a lot because on one hand, just like taxes, just like injunctions for a lot of reasons, the state forcing you to do labor for them is pretty fucked up. In fact, it is a sort of micro form of slavery, right? There's a lot of things that the state mandates people do for critical reasons that are technically micro versions of slavery, right? Jury duty. They force you to go and do work for them against your will, even if you don't want to. A lot of people don't want to. They try to get out of jury duty because it is a form of micro slavery. A less form, I think it's larger. It's also a form of slavery. Would be the draft, right? In fact, I think that's pretty bad, right? You're putting a gun in somebody's hands and forcing them into a combat zone where they very well could die. I think it's one of the worst kinds of labor that you can be forced to do, and that's just a given, right? Because the state has deemed it necessary for the state's survival. So, we have examples of drafting, of jury duty, of and of course all the taxes that go towards all public goods, et cetera. All of that is basically a form of labor expropriation. That's what it is. You're mandating that certain labor be done against the person's will, and that be expropriated in order to fulfill some kind of common purpose. Here, the question is one of, okay, well, what if the state needs to do its job in regards to drugs? Now, obviously, drugs should be legal, but assuming that they are illegal and the state has some kind of interest, hypothetically, let's say, the state has some kind of interest in enforcing laws against drugs, well, they should, of course, be able to search people for drugs. And if they're hiding the drugs in their anus, they're going to have to go into someone's anus to get the drugs, just like if they had any kind of contraband. You can't be like, well, I don't, I may have drugs in there, but I don't give you permission to go up in there, because that's the only way that they're getting the drugs. Assuming that, of course, you would just poop it out. In this case, I don't know why they just didn't potentially wait for that. Maybe it was really stuck up in there. So the answer that I want to give is that no, a hospital should not be forced to provide any kind of treatment. They shouldn't be forced to provide abortions. They shouldn't be forced. It's a Catholic hospital. They shouldn't be forced to provide any kind of service. No hospital should be forced to provide any kind of service. But what if it is critical to the functioning of a law enforcement role, and law enforcement is one of the few domains that we accept the state to have? Well, ideally, we would again let them say fuck you. But what if every single hospital says fuck you? Then how are the cops going to enforce their job? Like how is anybody in the government going to be able to enforce their job here without having some kind of like centralized government hospital where they specifically do these kind of searches? That's a tough problem. That's a very tough problem, and I don't know the answer to that. But what I do know is that currently in the United States, there's a lot more than just these Catholic hospitals that would do it. So I think the state should have to exhaust their options with other medical providers before they move on to this kind of mandates for everybody to do what they want. Now, if it really gets to the point where there's nobody that'll do it, we can start having those tough conversations. But in my mind, the way to minimize the amount of force we're making people do, we should first exhaust every other medical provider that it could be willing to do it, and then go from there. So I disagree with the government in this case. I don't think that they sufficiently went to potential alternatives to do the drug search.
Thanks so much, Ali.
Yeah, I go by sociologic. If you want to see me engage with the crazy hypotheticals that Lactoid throws out, I'm here Mondays, always. But on the topic, yeah, no. First of all, I didn't know that cops could make any doctor forcibly sodomize someone for drugs because it's in someone's ass. Fuck that. If they want to take the potential lawsuit or harm or ethic or moral that comes with that, they can take them to the jail and stick their fingers in their ass and take it out, and they can deal with the consequences of that action if it's that important and that severe that you need to get the drugs out right now. Because if you take this and turn it around and say it was a girl, I don't think anyone would want anyone shoving their finger in a vagine to pull out the drugs. I think we would just wait till they came out of natural causes. I don't know if they would fall out eventually, but yeah, no, I don't think the cops can have someone forcibly, especially not for like drugs. If this is like a murder case and they shove the weapon up their ass, maybe, like maybe I'd be like, yeah, we got to get this weapon out. They're gonna
Go to a
hold it
metal
for dear
detector.
life. But like, I mean, like, yeah, also, like, you could just X-ray. It will eventually come out. Like, you can't hold for that long. But yeah, take the responsibility upon yourself. It's extreme circumstances. Drugs aren't a severe enough reason for me to tell a third party to perform sodomy just so that you can get your little drug baggie. No, we can wait it out, and that's why that's the like religious reason. Like they'd probably throw out Prime is that like we're not performing sodomy. Fuck that. But yeah,
Good point.
yeah, no. If the cops want the drugs that badly, they can themselves.
Okay. I'm curious what a biology class led by Professor Ali would look like.
Sign me up. I got the wrong education.
What was I wrong about anything? What did I say?
It's just no. Don't worry. I just think it would be fun.
You just meant you're entertaining. You didn't mean that you were wrong.
Yeah. Don't leave that alone. But next, our friend Gibbs, please. He knows how a woman's vagina works. Ain't that right, Gibbs?
Yeah. Let me tell you. I'll tell you one other thing is that there's about 2 words for what the government can compel me to do if I decide I'm not doing it, and that's fuck all. Like I'm telling you right now, they ain't gonna be able to make me do shit. There's a reason why Texas is the state that says come and take it. We fully believe in might makes right. Like they might maybe make some stuff an inconvenience for you. They're gonna make me go to court. If I'm sorry, they're not gonna make me finger pop somebody's asshole to find some drugs if I'm a doctor. It just is not gonna happen. Luckily, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a religious doctor. But the point is, though, regardless, they're just not going to be able to do shit in that regard. And anybody that advocates that they should and they're confused about it is a commie.
Thank you for that, Gibbs. As always, I apologize for anyone who ever has to go after Gibbs. But our friend Grid is here, and we missed him. We didn't have him last week. Brian, I think the week before too. I think, but still, one or the other. Thank you for being here, Grid.
Yeah, sorry I was absent a couple of weeks. I last week I was at DebateCon in New Jersey, so unfortunately couldn't be here for that. So this is to me, this is, I don't even know that there's a real debate here to be had, simply because they literally were asking to violate a lot of constitutional premises, and not just the First Amendment, but the 13th Amendment, as Lactoid said. There's a lot of different things there. But we don't even have to go quite that deep. The state cannot compel a medical professional to do anything. They can punish them if they don't, if a court decides such as a case, but they would have a horrible time trying to convince a judge that a doctor saying stop and wait for this to happen naturally, in my medical opinion, is the correct way to go. Like the cops are completely wrong in this case. They're absolutely wrong. I have no idea why they were in such an impatient stance, and they were really abusing their authority. To be honest, I believe they risk, and they are being sued by the hospital. Just as something that I didn't hear you mention, maybe you did, and I just skipped over it. They actually did a CT scan on the man that showed no foreign object, and that wasn't enough to assuage the cops. Now, that in and of itself, without the patient's permission, is a violation of that patient's rights. Patients have rights, and they do. So, unfortunately, as much as I generically tend to side with law and order, there was no law and there was no order in this case. They suspected a drug deal of happening. They already had foregone a conclusion of a drug deal happening, and they were simply trying to prove what they wanted to prove. Damned the law. Let's just go with what we want to have happen. As far as the people involved, it's hospitals. The hospital president actually was well within his right to refuse the treatment under the First Amendment. There's nothing the hospital did wrong, but as always, it has to be. You have to remember that sometimes battles aren't worth the war, right? Because you can beat the rap, but can you beat the ride? How much is this going to cost the hospital? How much are they going to suffer in legal fees? They say they're already being, their police force was disbanded. They've suffered other censure in the community. So again, they stood their ground. I think they did the right thing. They're probably going to just come out on the right side in court, but they're still taking the ride. They're still going to spend the money. They're still going to spend the time. And the fact that law enforcement can abuse their authority in such a way and cause this kind of damage to a hospital is pretty dramatic to me. And I'm just gonna leave you with that. A government that is literally up your butt is way too powerful, and we don't need that.
Okay. Interesting. I wonder. Okay, that's quite interesting. In terms of that CT scan, so I'm just gonna read to the audience so they understand the exact nuance here. The officers took Harris, with the suspect, to Mercy Health Lorraine Hospital, the hospital in question, where a CT scan noted something in Harris's bowels, but did not indicate if it was a foreign object. The hospital said. So it could have, like, I'm guessing that just like was a shadow, like in his bowels. But like there could have just been poop, like the usual thing that's there. But so
What?
there was no like definitive, like it wasn't like the weapon.
It was
that,
inconclusive.
Like, Ali. Yeah, it is inconclusive. Yeah, like it wasn't like shaped like a knife, like it was a weapon. I was like, oh, okay, well then, that's
Or a baggie of
right?
drugs.
But, yeah,
a baggie of drugs probably looks like shit, right?
Yeah, bagging of drugs probably looks like probably looks
like a
the-
stool, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So
Do you
but
think the
also
envelope would
think
be
of it
more
as
reflective, though, right? From the CT
reflective.
scan, wouldn't it show up differently because the CT scan's not like an X-ray?
That's
Um,
true.
yeah,
But
The
like when
but
you
CT scan, that
you
I would think that a glassine baggie in your rectum would glow like a fucking like a LED
I'm not sure
nightlight.
if it glows in a CT.
I'm being
like you said,
facetious, but
reflect it would, like something would reflect off of like whatever laser or ray was shooting off of it.
yeah, CT scans are
There
very
would be a
different
way
than
to
X-rays.
image it. Not sure if it's X-ray or something else, but there would be a way to image it.
Well,
'Cause
they
it wouldn't have
use
the exact same
specifically use CT
density
scans.
as the guts of a human body.
Yeah.
You could image it through
But yeah, I don't know if a
colonoscopy. That's
CT
for
will
sure.
do that. Yeah, a colonoscopy will do that. But all right. Well, anyway, our friend Corey, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me. What I do have to say is, I actually feel unsafe right now since we have both Gibbs and iCal. Where if I get measles, I'm blaming either one of you in this call, because for
That's
sure
right.
it's coming from
Haha.
Texas. But yeah, as alluded
You
to,
can blame me too.
are
You
you
have the
sick?
measles.
You could blame lactoid more than you could us. Well,
And-
yeah, I'm pretty sure Gibbs is pro-vaccine.
Oh, okay, well,
I like
I'm
vaccines
happy
for
to hear it.
me when I want them.
Would you want? But yeah, as alluded to, I think Lactoid and others of like this is a really complex matter. And I don't know exactly where the line is, but I would say so far based off of what I read in the story and like pretty much I think what everyone else is like, yeah, the police have like crossed the line, and that's too much intervention. And I sort of side with what Ali outlined in terms of like if they want to get the evidence, then the cops have to do it. This might actually now, let's say, encourage cops, and now we have to force cops to have more training to actually do cavity searches. And I guess what I would say is like, if we have cops doing this, which they should take it in their own hands to do it, they're going to be held liable, as in if the patient dies, like that's on them, and they should suffer the consequences for that. If they damage the patient during the cavity search, then that's on them, and they should be held accountable for that. And then maybe that ups the stakes in terms of whether a cop actually wants to pursue a cavity search, because then it's going to be on them, as opposed to it's easy to just say, well, hey, the doctor does it, if the doctor doesn't want to do it. I see that so far off the top of my head as like the most, at least a compromise that I can see somehow working, maybe. And yeah, I'll leave it there for now.
I'm not sure if I said this before, if anyone else said this afterwards. But to be clear, no drugs were ever found from the
Right.
suspect, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
And they did sample his stool. Like they kept him there for like 3 days.
Yeah, they kept him there for a while. And eventually he was like let go.
That's a whole other question. How long should they be able to detain you?
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah. But so just to be clear, they never found it, and the guy's out free right now. So yeah, let's go to our friend Aiko.
So I'm glad we all seem to agree on this. Maybe what I'm about to say will help us like get to something else where we disagree more. I don't know, but this is a Catholic hospital, and recently, like very recently, like in the last few days, there was a papal letter in response to Vance's claim. Vance made this strange claim that that Christians should care about people close to them first, and then with each like degree of separation between them and the other, they should care less and less. So like people who are on the other side of the world from you, for instance, are the people that you need to care the least about, and that's our focus should be on caring about. His claim was just citizens, right? We should care about them. It's part of the America First thing, I suppose, like trying to make it work with the Gospels. But he's Catholic. J.D. Vance is Catholic. So Francis responded specifically with a letter to the U.S. bishops. And the U.S. bishops are not exactly on the left. They're pretty darn conservative. But he sent them a letter, and they've been reacting to this letter, like positively with Francis. And part of it read, God will richly reward all that you do for the protection and defense of those who are considered less valuable, less human, less important, or less human. I exhort all of the faithful of the Catholic Church and all men and women of goodwill not to give in to the narratives that discriminate against and cause unnecessary suffering, or discriminate and cause unnecessary suffering. So I think that I don't know if this this Catholic hospital was in any way like responding to the order that came from the Pope on this, but it certainly sounds consistent with that order, which is if the government steps in and tells you to do something in the name of law and order or whatever it may be, if it violates like the human dignity to do that thing, then it is your responsibility to resist. In this case, we all agree with the choice of the hospital to resist in this particular instance. But there will be more cases like this, many more of them. Some of you, on whether you are on the left or on the right, you might have different reasons to agree or disagree with it. Right? The Catholic Church has had these fights over, for instance, abortion. Somebody comes in and demands an abortion. Can you, as a Catholic doctor, say, I can't do this, go somewhere else? Like, let somebody who's not Catholic perform this procedure because it goes against my religious conscience. But also, like, if you're being told, listen, I had to take my mother to the ER last week, and she's fine, everything's fine. But, and I think Prime knows this because I mentioned it to him. One of the things they asked is they said, hey, we have a new question on our intake forms that just like came to us like very, very recently from the federal government. I have to ask you if you are in the country legally. And of course, I immediately answered yes, because my mother is a citizen and wasn't anything. But it just occurred to me that, wow, there's going to be hospitals all over the country, some of whom will not add this question to their intake, despite being ordered to by the federal government. And so in a lot of these questions, we're going to have to ask ourselves, who do you trust more, government or the church? And I suppose that's a highly context-dependent question for a lot of people. They're going to give a different answer depending on what the topic is. But I think ultimately, especially over the next 4 years, we're going to see more and more sort of war of words between the government as it tries to pursue new priorities and the church as it tries to continue to live by its own moral standards.
Okay, thank you. Open to the panel.
I think we all agree.
I was about to say, yeah.
Do we all agree?
But
Well, I think there's some minor.
We all
detail.
agree on this topic for sure, what this hospital did. But do we
Yeah,
agree in the larger debate?
I think you have to get to the large debate, yeah, because I don't think these specific actions appear to be like unnecessarily. There's so many other alternatives.
Very
right?
over the top, yeah.
They could have found a different hospital. They could have waited. I don't understand in this case why body cavity surgery was even necessary. I mean, there was a couple things that they could have done that I guess they seem very insistent on just not doing. Now, if a court orders you to do something, you should probably do it. But like, I don't know, maybe that can be the
So
point of disagreement.
I don't know if you read the article, Lactoid, but in the
But what if the court's wrong?
hold
Like,
on.
Even if the court should tell you to do something, you should do it.
So-
Fuck that. You remember on this panel, I actually showed this clip on stream earlier this week. We were talking about how the Supreme Court wanted to stop Texas from doing shit with the border, and I said that you catch these hands. I stand by that statement.
Yeah, I disagree with you on that. Remember that?
I can't help but that you respect
I think
that one.
Texas
If
should have had to follow the Supreme
comes
Court.
down here and they want to tell us what's up on a situation we know they're wrong on, they catch these hands too. Again, to this day, I
Not the
see
way
so
that
much
was.
Wait, so you
coming
just
together.
bow down?
Well,
anytime
that's a
the
great
government
line
says
of-
Yeah,
something?
dude, I'm
That-
sorry
that's-
that I'm not willing to be a baby back bitch like Lactoid is.
Yeah,
Anytime the court says
that's
something, you just
cool,
have to
but
bow?
we got,
The-
Corey, sorry, Grid was talking.
I thought this was a miracle.
yeah. So
great.
all that's cool, but the thing is that one of the reasons why the hospital would not perform the search is the guy said, "I don't consent to this. This is not. I'm not okay with this." And there is a law. There is a law in place, and I happen to know this because when before my brother passed, my mom tried to call the sheriff to have him have the sheriff come out and with an ambulance and force my brother to seek treatment. They literally told him if a human being is awake and can respond and says, "I don't want help," we can't force them to seek help. That works both ways. If the patient says, "No, you're not sticking your fingers up my butt. I don't want you to do that," the hospital has to respect that. That's in their code. That's in their, that is their
If they're
rights.
of
That's-
sound mind, yes.
Also, the cops were wrong. So it's like
yeah, and the cops are
Yeah,
wrong.
that-
So by waiting, there was nothing lost here. There was nothing lost here except the cops get a black eye for being
absolutely relevant.
dicks. right?
We
There's
talk about post like the post.
No,
rationalization.
it's not relevant to the
It's
question
100%
of like.
relevant that they were wrong. So
100%
okay, okay. I know. If they found drugs,
someone, they took them in. They tried to make a doctor forcibly
I
sodomize
know,
him for the
I
drugs that were
understand.
up his ass, and yeah, they were wrong.
Yeah. It makes it feel more like makes it feel like
No, it doesn't make it feel more.
you get angry, you get more
Fact of the
incensed,
matter
you get
was-
more incensed about it.
But
But
the facts
question
don't care about the feelings. They were wrong.
the question is not were they right or wrong about this guy having drugs. The question is, do they have the right to do this?
Wait,
Well, if they're wrong, they don't have that right, do they?
No. Clearly,
Are
they don't
you
have
saying-
the
are
right
you
to
saying-
do this because
Whoa,
they're not
Ali,
competent enough to get it right.
Ali, are you
Well-
saying that the cops only have the right to search for drugs if they find drugs?
Honestly, I think 9 times out of 10, yeah, cops. Wait, yeah, if there's no problem, if the probable cause is, I think he put him in his ass. Yeah, you need
You
need
search.
evidence.
The whole point of a search.
You need
is to try to
evidence.
the whole.
Well, let's be clear. Let's be clear, though.
that he saw him do it.
Probable cause, I think, is what
Yeah,
you're
so the
looking
cop
Well,
can
hold
say
on.
whatever the fuck
Let's
he
let's be
wants.
clear that a judge
That's what
did
I'm looking
issue
for.
2 warrants
With the
to
drugs,
search his anus.
Yeah,
The
that's-
doctors
we're looking at the drugs.
refused.
Let's
Yeah.
change the hypothetical slightly. All right.
Mm-mm,
Well,
mm-mm.
let's make.
Why this isn't a hypothetical?
you-
Let's engage with the actual
would you let-
situation.
hold
Why
on,
do we
if
have to
the
Because
go
we
there?
judge issued a
agree.
warrant to search
Because
their
we
ass-
agree on the
No,
situation.
we don't.
Hold
We
on,
don't.
Lactoid.
I said, and they were wrong, and you're like, well, that doesn't
Hold-
really matter. It
no, hold on,
completely
Lactoid.
matters.
To the
With
question of
judgment-
whether or not they should be able to do it.
Yes, it speaks
Hold
to
on.
their judgment.
La-
What's the
Lactoid,
point of it?
would you-
Whoa,
would
what
you
is the
agree
point of a
if a
search?
judge
What do you
if a
search?
judge issued a warrant and
That
they
I
said,
trust
"Hey,
your judgment
you
enough
have to
to
get
believe
like
that the
fucked in
person
the
I'm
ass by
searching has
somebody,"
drugs.
would you allow that to go through, Lactoid? Would
What'd
you
say
say
one
that
time,
they should?
Gibbs?
If a judge issued a warrant and this was like the law, they said, "Hey, you have to let that man fuck you in the ass." Would you do it just because the judge issued the warrant? I mean, that's the argument you're making.
Well, you know,
Wait a
They-
minute.
They should have.
I
No,
believe in the
does that mean-
Constitution. I'm an
I know this is a
originalist.
meme argument, but this is like
I'm
this
an
is what you're
originalist,
arguing right here.
so-
You're like, hey,
I would-
if this
I
guy-
would-
if
I would
the
do
judge
an
orders,
emergency
he's looking
appeal,
a finger up
The
his
appellate
ass,
court.
you'll find
for a,
drugs.
For a
Oh, so you're not an
unconstitutional.
originalist. What if it was
Well,
the Supreme Court?
the originalist, an original interpretation of of the Constitution and all law would never mandate someone to come fuck me in the ass. Okay.
Well, that's what
One-
they're doing either.
That's
Finger fucking
literally
in the
what's
ass.
happening.
We're just taking it one step
It's just
further.
No,
finger fucking.
it's
Yeah,
okay.
It's
Hold
fucking
on.
light.
No,
it is finger fucking because they have to massage the
There
You
was
can't-
prostate,
you-
drugs
find
in
the
there.
thing
It
in
literally
there.
would have been the equivalent to
If
just
there
getting a finger
was,
in your ass.
what if there was? Then the finger's still in your ass.
But here's the thing: there wasn't. I
But
don't even
let's
have
say
it.
there
Fuck them for
was.
the drugs, literally.
But
What,
there
hypothetically,
Yeah,
this is
you
what we're
still
gonna engage in.
you still shouldn't be able to forcibly tell
Okay.
a doctor to force their finger up the push.
All
Now,
right,
here's
right.
the thing.
What
You
if
wanna
I
know
see
why?
you
Watch,
put the
watch,
drugs
watch.
in there?
Do you want no?
Well,
no,
actually,
This is why.
Lactoid, hold on.
Because the judgment of
Sociologic.
the person coming to me, if they can be wrong sometimes, and so like this cop can come to me and say, "Hey, I saw him put so much cocaine in his ass that
Because
you
you
have to
can
get
be
it out right
wrong
now."
sometimes makes you never.
Yeah,
wrong.
because
Yeah,
they were in fact wrong, and because the reality is that the current doctrine legally is it's better to miss 1,000 times than imprison the wrong guy one time.
Big based.
Uh-huh.
So hold on.
Amazing.
Look at Daddy Good One coming in for the
Keep
kill.
in mind, if we're gonna roll with this, we're never gonna be able to convict anybody on rape offenses anymore.
Yeah. Like
That goes out the window.
Why?
Because we cannot guarantee that 1 out of 1,000 isn't going to be wrong. About 2%. About 2% of people were
Yeah.
convicted, which is much more than 1
Or
out
we
of
just get
1,000.
better at
About 2%.
Or we just get better at trying rape cases.
there's like a missing child, right? And like the cop sees them, like the suspect actually like struggling to get this child into their house, right? Like, and then close the door, and then you can't issue a warrant, right? Because he only saw.
You could be wrong. The cop was
He could be
wrong before.
right? It's possibly that could be his child, right? That looks
It's
exactly
a
like his
violation
child.
of my house.
right?
They're raping my house.
Yeah. You're raping the house. Issuing a warrant for a house check is completely different than issuing a fucking colonoscopy. Okay.
It can
What
be
if
even
I'm hiding
worse.
a kid?
You
Yeah,
can't
but
legally
worse.
mandate a
Yeah.
colonoscopy.
I don't hide my
He's
secrets.
fucking the child in his
No,
ass.
no,
all
no.
day.
I don't hide my
promise.
secrets in my anus. I hide them in my house, right? So
You
actually, it might be
script them, you
worse.
script-
I'd
you
actually
script
rather
them,
you
you
stick your
script
finger
them,
in my
kangaroo
butt
pouch up his
and
ass.
search my
Okay,
house.
Rex,
What if I'm hiding a dirty bomb in my butthole? Can you search for it there, Ali?
I feel like the radioactivity leaking
No.
would be the
If you
clue.
brought someone with a dirty bomb stuck up their ass to my hospital, I would kick you out of my hospital and take you. Get the fuck away from me. I'm not putting my finger in
Should anybody on suspicion, let's say they had an 85% chance of being right, not 1 in 1,000.
They had
85 85%.
How did you get those odds?
But okay, it's a dirty bomb. Somebody saw
You
them
drive
and
it out to
stick
the
a
middle of the
dirty
desert,
bomb.
let them blow up, bro.
Yeah.
That's
No,
what
no,
you
no.
do.
Whoa,
You
whoa.
stick a finger up
It's
his
not going to
ass.
blow up on its own. They are going to be able to reach
then he
in and
starves
pull it
to
out
death.
on their
Whatever.
own
It'll be fine.
accord and detonate it.
Yeah. Now when the person when you do that, are you willing to take the risk of that person going, "Hey, this officer just raped me." Take the risk and stick your finger in his ass if you're willing to risk that 15% of being wrong.
At some
Yeah,
point,
yeah, if you're willing to
a
risk
dirty
that
bomb,
15%,
absolutely.
I mean,
100%.
Yeah.
I don't know what a dirty bomb is.
It's a bomb that releases radioactive material without necessarily being nuclear. It's
Why
like
do
a
you-
How
serious
big of a
weapon.
bomb could that be? if
I'm
it's up his
supposed to be
ass?
the expert
Is
on
it gonna
this
be a dirty
shit.
bomb for the room? Like, bro, like what are you worried about here? Like,
That's
you
like,
see,
that's-
like he doesn't have the fucking Hiroshima
Yeah,
nuke under his
if you have a
up his asshole,
suspected
bro.
terrorist in
Like-
front of you, I mean, sure, like at all costs, protect our great nation. But like, you're willing to take the risk of sodomizing. I don't know.
That's what I going.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say if we agree with the specific example of this hospital, right? If we go maybe a little step from this, because I think a lot of us agree with the hospital because we agree with the particular point that I'm not sure we all agree on, and maybe this example is what's hiding the disagreement, and that is stop and frisk, right? If it really is if the big problem with this is consent, obviously people who are frisked in the stop and frisk program, the cop doesn't even have to have cause to do it. They can just do it at random, and they certainly don't have the consent of the person that they're frisking.
Well, it's random, but every time
Yeah,
they're
that's
black,
ridiculous.
So, like,
Hey,
I don't know
hold on,
how
that's
random it
ridiculous.
is if every time you stop someone, they're black.
Wait a minute.
Who here is in favor of stop and frisk? Okay, what's your point? So yeah, nobody here is in favor. Of
Well, I just wanted to see if we had any stop and frisk people in here. I don't know.
Like, what do you?
Scott's in favor.
Let me, I guess, clarify. Like,
A lot of people on this
stop and
panel
frisk,
voted for the stop and frisk president. So I just wanted to...
just when you say stop and like, I'm okay. I'm okay if the cops have a lawful reason to stop you. I think that they're fine in frisking you for weapons.
What's a lawful reason?
If they see you doing something
Stop
illegal.
and frisk says you don't have to have a reason.
No,
Wait.
Well, so I understand, and so I wouldn't be in favor
if
of
I
arbitrary
jaywalk,
stoppage of
they have a
civilians.
reason to frisk me for
This is
like,
why
a
we
gun?
this is why we don't have it. This is what I'm saying is like, I can just be putting my hand in my pocket. A couple I saw you put something in your pocket. It's like there's no limitation to like human error in this. So like, yeah, those stop
You
and frisk in the
jaywalk.
middle of the street.
Yeah,
Like,
there's going to be errors. I understand.
Probable cause at least
yeah,
has
it's not worth
like,
it. That's
some
not,
sort of
the
threshold.
where-
that you
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
hit.
errors outweigh
so
the
the-
potential gain. There's no
Well,
ROI.
again, it depends on the result, right? Like, or not the result. It depends on like the risk. So again, the dirty bomb has an extraordinarily high risk, 80, and so I'm willing to tolerate a higher error rate if it means preventing a potential weapon of mass destruction going off in a major city. When it comes to drugs, I would agree that for drugs, I would want a much higher chance of certainty before you
Okay.
go through something as violative as sticking your finger in someone's butthole, right? I agree.
All right, what about like the person, I think the person who is making the report or calling the judgment, also you have to take that into consideration. If like just the Boston PD comes in, this guy has a dirty bomb in his ass, like I don't know if this guy knows that anything about uranium bombs or anything to like make that call, right? But if you're like, I don't know, like military, Navy, whatever, whoever deals with these types of situations, and you're making the call, I mean, sure. But like it's the person who's making the judgment, and so like the cops like in this situation brought in someone, and it's like you can't. The cop's judgment is clearly horrible.
And
Like,
to
I
be
don't know
clear,
how
stop and
they-
frisk is in use in
Yes, but stop and frisk requires probable cause.
What state or county was this in? I didn't really like read too much.
Okay.
Was in Ohio.
Yeah, I'm not gonna like listen. I'm not
He
gonna lie. I
admits
just
it.
go off.
He admits
I go off the rip here. We do
Yeah.
off a free. We freestyle.
Okay.
You're
yeah,
here to
Ohio.
represent the normies, so that makes total sense.
Okay. Huh.
I read the headline in the
Um,
question.
Yeah.
It was Ohio. And
Jimmy.
and did you read the
Yeah, I don't
question?
trust
It wasn't
Ohio
a
cops
question. It wasn't a
too much.
topic, right? Like it was last year, police in a small house town. Like that's where it was.
You just read the questions part at the end. That's it. He read.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He didn't read the whole question. He just read
Yeah, yeah,
part
like
of the
it's
question.
in the topic. Okay, all right.
I'm here
Anyway.
There
every Monday,
were
guys.
words that he
I'm
paid
here every
attention
Monday.
to.
Come
Yeah.
listen to my opinions.
Anus is what he grasped, nothing else.
That's all I had to know.
Okay. So yeah, I when designing this question, at first I wasn't going to pick this topic because I knew immediately we're all going to agree. I don't think anyone would disagree with like that. This was an overreach. Okay. But like the point of disagreement, I think, becomes where the state can compel. Right now, like Gibbs says, like not at all, right? So I wouldn't agree with that. I would agree. I think at some point the state should be able to compel or like it's not a state, right? If it
I mean,
can't
they can
compel,
physically make me do
literally-
it. Like, I guess if they like hold me down and pry my cheeks apart, but it's
Yeah.
gonna be a cold day in hell before I'm
Okay,
like,
so-
yeah, sounds good.
No. So that's different. But that's different. What you're saying, right? You're saying that like they have to exert enough force on you to actually physically make you do it. I'm saying that the state should have the ability to use compulsion. I'm not sure if I'm using the exact word for this, but like that you can like put consequences on heap consequences on a person or an organization, right? To get them to do something, right? Negative consequences.
Yeah,
Um,
Gibbs, you're not a prison
No.
abolitionist.
No. What I'm saying is, listen, there's absolutely like a level, right? They can like heap the consequences on, right? But there is like a level to where you absolutely can say no, like I'm not gonna do X, Y, Z. Then they can imprison you, and at some point they will physically, can do whatever they want, right? Because it's the might makes right. But up until that point, like you have like they're not gonna go to arrest this doctor for not going to doing it. So if he's like,
I mean,
fuck
right.
you, they're like, we might put you in jail for a few days. If he's willing to suffer the punishment, there's no way they can
That's
physically
a different
make
question.
it.
What would be-
That's
what-
a different question. Like, yes, a person has a right to refuse, right? Or not even right. Let's say they don't have a quote unquote right to refuse, but they can refuse, right? As an individual actor, they can refuse an order,
Yeah,
right?
sometimes they should fight back.
But no, but that's not. But clearly, that's not what I'm asking in this question, right? It's does the state should the state have the ability to compel a person to do something, and where is the line between what it's acceptable to compel and what
Well, I don't think they
Should
can
there be
compel
a
you.
board, like court or jail in front of you and be like, hey, if you don't do this, you're gonna go to jail for 5 years or X. Like with the Apple case, right? Wasn't there like a huge court case where like the court wanted Apple to hack the phone and Apple
Yes.
said no, right?
Yes.
Like
Right.
that's like should the court
The FBI
be
did
able
that.
to like hold you to like a certain standard?
No, they
Apple
shouldn't be
won
able to
that
make
case.
an independent. Hold on, there's like they shouldn't be able to make an independent actor have to come do something in order for them to get it done. If they want to do it, they should have their own people, and that'll be decided. And then you can fight about whether or not. Then you can either go like revolution, or you can go like you fight them in the courts. But there's like absolutely no way they should make a third party have to go do something. They can go fuck themselves, if they
Especially
do
for
that.
free, because
Let's
it's
go
for
to-
free, right? They
Are they
do
gonna
this for free.
free? Are they gonna pay me? Like, and if they do,
Yeah, do they,
it'll
wait,
be-
wait, hold that. That is a
or
question.
is it
Do
gonna
the
be
doctors
market
get paid
value
this?
for my
Black
time?
Toy-
Probably not.
Black Toy, do doctors that are non-government issued do they get paid for this procedure?
I don't know.
Can you try to figure that out? I would not. Be
Yeah,
able to figure
sure.
that out,
I'll
Thank
I'll
you.
look into that. I was also looking into stop and frisk.
Cool.
So on paper, it requires reasonable suspicion, which is that there's articulable suspicion that a crime may have occurred. It's not just like
Yes.
a hunch, or that you just like randomly could stop somebody who's just walking on the side of the road. There would need to be like, there is a report of a crime in this area. This person's like walking away from the scene of the crime, like shifting, like, in their clothing or whatever, reaching their clothing, like looking back at you. There's like some reports that may link this person to somebody who was there, but nothing like definitive. I'm fine with stopping that person and questioning them. I think that would make sense. If we're talking about just randomly stopping people on the street, just and randomly, and just searching them, or arbitrarily stopping somebody and searching them, I'm not okay with that. And there's some accusations that stop and frisk has been used that way, where cops are literally just walking around, see somebody, we might as well just put a search here. Not okay with that. I am okay with I guess the official stop and frisk, which is I have some reason to believe that a crime may have occurred. I think you might be involved because of XYZ. So I'm going to stop you, question you, and while I'm questioning you, frisk you briefly for weapons. I think that's reasonable. I think that if a cop also sees somebody like hiding a weapon, that's reasonable for a search at that point. I think
Well, I have an issue. I have an issue with the
That's
blanket of
debating.
no, we can talk about it.
with I have a big issue with the idea of officer safety trumping everything else. I've actually been I was and I was telling this on my show earlier today. I was in a 7-Eleven in Colorado. It's an open carry state. I open carry all the time. The younger officer and I were having it was a very brief but a pleasant conversation about. He asked me, "Hey, what's a cool gun you got? What do you got?" And I said, "It's HKP-30." He's like, "Cool, that's awesome." I'm like, "What do you got?" And he said, "Oh, I got department issue Glock 17." He's like, "Ah, that's cool too." About that time, an older officer with the biggest chip on his shoulder you could possibly carry comes in and sees that I'm carrying and engaging with his officer and immediately demands that I disarm. And I told him to go fuck himself.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Hold on, I agree with you.
Because of officer safety. See, this is the thing this is the bullshit that and they can say that about anything. They can say, I have to frisk you for officer safety. And if I just happen to find drugs, or if I just happen to find a pocket knife or whatever it is that they happen to find, well, then they didn't need that their probable cause is negated by this officer safety bullshit that they pull.
Right. Let me elaborate a little bit more. If you see somebody open carrying, and again, if you have some reason to believe that they may have been involved in a reported crime, right? There needs to be some kind of reasonable suspicion.
What is some reason? What is some
Again,
reason?
again, a report.
I got pulled over because I
I'll
drive
give
a
you an
black
example.
truck, and it's the same vicinity as someone else got a black truck. That's not reasonable reason to pull me over.
You're right.
Well, I got a story about that too, Gibbs. I'm gonna light you up in a minute. You're gonna go nuclear.
A black truck, a black truck in a black truck in a city full of black trucks. I agree. But Gibbs, what if? Yeah, what if a cop gets a call of like an armed robbery, and then like they get a report that it was a man wearing a Hawaiian shirt who maybe had some jewelry around his neck. He had a big beard.
Had the drip,
and he robbed the store in a ski mask. And then they are driving past, 2 blocks away, and they see somebody who like matches that description.
Nowhere near there.
Who sees somebody matches that description, and they see like what appears to be like the top end of a ski mask poking up out of the back pocket. In my opinion, this would be enough to stop the person and say, "Hey, did you happen to be around this store?"
Gibbs loves to ski. He's a huge skier.
I think that'd be reasonable, and I will agree with Grid here that in the situation where if there's no like suspicion of a crime and you're just standing there open carrying, which open carrying, it's not a crime in my state. I shouldn't be a crime anywhere. But and there's no reason to suspect a crime. Okay, that's fine. But what if like you're driving and you look over and you see somebody like quickly shuffling in front of them, and you see them pull out a gun or like move a gun, and then quickly hide it in their pants while they're like,
oh, that's happened. The guy at Walmart a couple of years ago.
And then throw their hoodie over.
Hold on, what if they just want to deal with the hassle of the cop coming to harass them because he saw him with a gun?
Well, no. So I think,
we're like, who are you to just start like guessing these people's mentalities? Like,
what I think this is if somebody is
that's determination as to whether or not there's purpose to it or whether it's random.
Well,
yes,
hold on. I think
all right.
I think there's a fair percentage where if you see somebody quickly shuffling to hide a handgun in their belt and like hide it away from the cops when you're pulling up next to them.
Yeah,
I think that's sufficient. I think that is sufficient for the cops. I think that's sufficient for the cops to at least ask, "Hey, are you legally allowed to carry that gun?" Because
I'm gonna give you a story. Lactoid,
or do I think violent felons should?
Lactoid, I gotta get your opinion on this. Okay, I gotta get your opinion. So years ago, this was probably. It's like 98, 99, somewhere along in there. I was out in Reno. I lived in Reno for a while. Actually, I lived at Tahoe. I worked in Reno. And I was driving from Tahoe down to Reno, go through the Washoe Valley, come out. Sheriff's department pulls me over. I have Tennessee plates on my vehicle because I live in Tennessee. And at that time, because it was the early age of integration, whatever reason, Nevada's DMV did not talk to Tennessee's DMV, and when they ran my plates, it came back that they didn't exist. Not that they're stolen, not that they're expired. They don't exist. So I get pulled over. I pull over. No big deal. I got my license. I got my registration. Got my insurance. All that. I also have a gun under the seat of my car. Now, I wasn't actually carrying it on me at the time because I was headed to work and I was in a suit. But I had the gun underneath the seat, which in Nevada law, that's an extension of your home. It's very helpful to know the laws of the state that you're in. So it's perfectly within my rights to have that gun there. So the officer comes to my passenger door rather than the driver's door, which put me a little off, but that's okay. As I'm rolling up the window, crank windows, by the way, this is old. And getting my wallet out, I look back over at the officer, and this woman has a gun pointed at me in my face.
That's ridiculous.
Because she saw the gun under my seat, Lactoid.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
I have a real problem with officer safety. Right? Like,
Hold on, man.
I'm nowhere near this damn gun. The gun is under my seat.
Hold on. We can both agree that's like a ridiculous over.
It is ridiculous, but these things happen.
That doesn't mean officer safety is nothing, right? Like you would agree with some element of officer safety if you're arresting somebody.
No, I don't. I believe that they get paid to take risk, and sometimes you have to.
Sure,
I don't agree with
a gun when they've been arrested in the back of the cop car.
I've actually heard stories of people who actually hidden knives and guns and drugs in the back of cop cars, and they clean them out all the time, and they're like, "What the fuck is this?" It's hilarious.
It's a problem. It's a problem when that happens, right?
Sure. No, look. Hey, if you're getting arrested is different than just the initial contact.
I agree. And look, if you're making an initial contact, and especially in your situation, in which the gun was under your seat, pulling the gun and aiming at you is completely unacceptable.
The whole thing was hilarious. Gibbs will lose his mind if I tell you the whole thing.
I also think that here's I think the reasonable way that should have been handled, because the license plate not coming back is the first sign of a stolen car, right? You get a fake. Yes, it is. You get a fake license plate. You put it in the back of a stolen car.
Yeah, Gridman stole a car.
I stole a car.
It could be. And hold on, I know that you didn't. I'm just saying this is the first indication of a stolen car. And so I think the cop is perfectly justified in pulling.
Oh yeah, pulling me. I didn't have a problem getting pulled over.
Great. Yeah, walking over and saying, "Hey, weird thing here. Your plate's not coming back. Can I just check the VIN to make sure the car
didn't get that far?"
Perfectly. I think that's perfectly reasonable. Hold on, real quick, Grid. You would agree with me that a cop pulling you over and just asking to look at the VIN.
So I'm going to give you. I'll give you another interaction. Similar deal, except actually, I think it was in that same state. Similar deal. Get pulled over. Officer says, "Sir, you have a gun under your seat." I said, "Yes, sir, I do." He says, "Don't reach for it, and I won't reach for mine. But if you go anywhere near that, we're gonna have a problem." That is how that should have been handled. I was in Utah at I just left Miller Motorsports Park. I was coming back. I passed a DUI checkpoint. I get pulled over. The officer said, comes over, truck full of dudes, the out-of-state plates on a weekend. He obviously thinks we're all drunk. He thinks we're out partying. And he says, "Hey, got your license?" I'm like, "Yeah, here's my license. My registration and insurance are in my glove compartment with my gun. I'm sure you would rather reach for those than me." And he did. He opened the door. He removed he said, "Hey, I'm going to take your gun with me. Just, because."
Fucking nice, bro.
Huh?
Bro, I would have lost my mind.
Nice to just be like, yeah, look at the cop, yeah, I bet you want to reach for it before I do.
Wait, hold on. Do you agree with the VIN question that the cop should be able to pull you over and ask to read your VIN for your car? I think that's reasonable, right?
No, fuck no.
I mean, if the registration doesn't match the tag, I would say that.
License
could be a fake license.
You over and asking,
hold on.
Lactoid.
Error on their part.
How long can he hold you to check this? How deep can he check?
Technically, you need to have a plate in order to drive in public roadways. So the cop could get your VIN.
Yeah, that's about it, right? It's hey, this car isn't reported stolen. I have the paperwork. I will see you later, officer.
Yeah. I
That's
want
it.
to. Yeah,
Bye.
and then I'm gonna ask for the
Hold on.
paperwork.
So now y'all want us
Damn,
not
bro,
only
you
to
want us a
answer.
lot.
This is ridiculous. Now you want not only us to answer to the government, you want us to answer for the government who might be having a system
their
there,
lackeys.
and so now we have to be held responsible to sit here for a computing error. This is fucking totalitarianism. That's what
Oh,
Lactose
yeah.
advocating.
This
Having
is
to, like,
bullshit.
Having
You're
the cop
taking
look at
my
your bin.
America away.
Yeah,
This
is
is
that
how you
right?
end up getting
I'm,
no
I'm
rights.
traveling. I'm not
here.
driving.
You guys
Is that
are
right?
obviously making great.
Lord
making great
officer,
Are you a
arguments.
Moor?
I'm
Okay.
so sorry, officer,
You're
that your
taking
computer
my
system
America away
is
from me.
broken. I'm so sorry it's broken. How? Let me just
Members of Moorish
acquiesce to your
Nation.
inconvenience of you not having this information that I've just so freely offered up. Like that's fucking
My
bullshit.
America away
I
from me.
can't
These are
even
my
believe that
freedoms,
you
red,
have these
white, and
arguments.
blue.
Yeah, I
I
think
mean, really, it's
I
legit.
think that
Star
if
Spangled
a
Banner.
cop runs your license plate and it comes back either stolen or it comes back nothing, and the cop
No,
is
there's
perfectly,
nothing. Then it's
Well,
nothing.
In today's world, I would agree with you,
the cop is
Lactoid.
perfectly
If it comes
fine
back
pulling,
stolen,
and
that's
Grid
one
agrees.
thing.
And Grid agrees. We pull the cop. We pull the person over,
Lactoid,
ask
in
them
today's
what
world, I
they feel
agree
about
with
it.
you. In 1998, when the DMVs were still operating on paper and you couldn't do shit online, I disagree with you. Because just because your state can't get my tag is meaningless to me. Because they don't,
Yeah, fuck
you
'em.
can't rely on the computer to get my tag.
I still think they should have been
Oh,
able
the
to pull
computer
you over and
system's down that
question.
day. Let's pull everybody over and let's search everybody's car.
Because here,
martial law. That's what we're gonna do.
What
Let's
if they
just have
put-
martial law. Hey,
That's what
Roma, are you
Lactoid
walking
said.
on this road after dark? Hey,
Lactoid.
let's have curfews.
That's what
Yeah,
I said. Yeah,
Lactoid says
That's
he
exactly
wants
what Lactoid said. That's what
checkpoints
I
at
heard.
every intersection, right?
Computer
I
problems, martial
want
law.
this authoritarian concept that you have to have like a little plastic card in order to even operate a vehicle. Crazy.
Hey,
This is-
guess what?
I'm basically a fascist.
You drove through the toll road and didn't
Talk
go
about
up.
wanting to know my
Arrest that man.
identification. It's called a
Arrest
government
him.
name. Why is it called
It-
a government name?
Actually, in
You're
Texas,
right.
I think on
It's
farm
like
roads, you don't need a
person, not
license
like
at
a
all.
corporation.
Okay.
It's not even God given anymore. It's your government name.
So, all right, about multiple things. All right, one lactoid, and this was something that confused.
I'm trying to be
me.
reasonable.
No, it's fine. It's
Yeah,
fine.
thank you.
I just hadn't read, and I really want to explore this limit because I think we're already stumbling upon the conflicts here. But just before we do that, right? And I don't know if you understand this part of the law, but cavity searches in general, I was surprised that they even needed a medical staff to
Device?
do that. Because I thought they could, in jail, stick
The
their
most common, well, they do. I think there's like some medical staff in jails that can do it, but you generally need medical staff to do it. The body cavity searches are generally rare. The most common reason this happens is for blood draws for DUIs. So in order to get a blood draw, you have to get a warrant, and then they will send you to a hospital, and like a nurse will come in, stick you with a needle, draw your blood, then measure your blood alcohol content with that, or scan for other drugs. Right? That requires a warrant, but they can do it, and they will have the hospital stick a needle in your arm. And by the way, that terrifies the fuck out of me because I hate needles.
Well, hold on, wait. They can only
That scares me more than a body cavity.
They can only issue a blood draw if like you got caught doing something. So it's like if it's a DUI, if it's something like that, then they can compel.
If they suspect you of a DUI, if you come back below 0.08, then you're fine.
Well, the
But
DUI laws are
assuming-
specific.
No. They can't suspect you of a DUI and take you to get a blood draw. They have to go through a procedure first. They'd have to do the.
Yeah.
the
You have to
breathalyzer,
refuse. You have to refuse
you don't have to
the
breathalyzer.
sobriety test.
or you'd have to refuse.
Not
Or if
so
they, hold on, like,
they can
like
they can do
Well,
a
I've
sobriety
had a
test
sobriety test,
and get a
then they
blood
tried
draw.
to
They
do a
can do
blood
both.
draw.
Wait, on spot. So wait, in what world
Well,
is
they
it?
have to take you to a hospital to do the blood draw. I watch plenty of cop videos. I've absolutely seen like a drunk person fail the fuck out of a sobriety test and then get taken to the hospital where they do a blood draw, and they're like, your blood alcohol content is point
Right, but he failed the
2.
test.
And you
That
can sue
Jesus
for
Christ.
that, right?
No, you can't sue for that.
What?
If it's a court order.
You'd impound my
It's a
car.
warrant.
You would impound my car, and then you would. I mean, well, like, yeah, you forcibly drew my blood. I feel like that's a weird.
Yeah, they will search you. It's considered a search. A blood draw is considered a search if there's a
you don't like
valid
police
warrant.
immunity, huh? You're not a fan of police immunity?
Yeah, they can even.
Me?
force
Nah, I
you-
mean, I've never been a fan. I don't
It-
really.
in terms of your phone, something pro tip is that they can force you to provide your fingerprint, like to get into your phone if you have a fingerprint lock. But they can't force you to like if there's a code, right, or a pattern, They can't force that out of you. So
What about
like,
Face ID? Close my eyes.
I guess Face ID would probably count, right? You just put it in front of your face. I mean,
Close
So-
my
Force
eyes.
you to open your eyes.
yeah. I mean, I think you're out of fucking luck.
I wish you would.
I mean, the reality is, like, if we end the drug war, most of the concern that comes around with like these police searches is going to go away, because most of the motivation that these police have in order to search people is to look for drugs, right? If you don't have cops searching for drugs in the same way and like policing the community in the same way, like most of the situations that we would see like searches would be for situations that are much more understandable. Like, oh, this guy like we heard 4 gunshots go off. This guy's running from the scene while hastily tucking something, and so we had to search him. Okay, that's way more fucking reasonable than pulling this guy over and having him sit in a hospital for an extended period of time, fighting over whether or not we can search his butthole for drugs, right? Like the first scenario is like way more reasonable for public safety and the shit that cops should actually be doing as opposed to the second situation.
Probably. Yeah.
Corey, come on, let's go. Let Corey in.
Just a quick question to Lactoid, and I think the article sort of alludes to the case where they wanted to draw this person's blood, and the nurse refused it because they I think didn't have a warrant at the time. But I'm just curious, like, do you know how it would play out in terms of like if they have a warrant to draw this person's blood to
They
test
got
the
2
blood for
warrants.
alcohol, but they okay, sure, 2 warrants. But well, no, I'm talking about the case where they didn't have the warrant. I'm talking about the blood draw.
I've seen I've seen a situation where a cop asked the nurse to do a blood draw without a warrant, and he was too lazy to like actually ask for one. And
It was
the
in
nurse
New
said,
Mexico.
"No, I'm not going to do that without a warrant." And then the cop arrested the nurse.
Yes.
And then
Yeah, I
he
think
got the cop got in trouble for that one.
He
As
got
he-
fired, and
Yeah,
she
I
sued and
agree.
won
But
$500,000.
I'm
she did nothing wrong. Yeah.
I'm just curious, like if they have a warrant, okay, but like no medical professional chooses to cooperate, like is that like the dead end that you were alluding to?
Yeah, that's a really tough situation. Like, because I would want a medical professional doing something like that. And let's say we have some actually valid reason to be searching someone's like blood or butthole or whatever the fuck, not the weird scenario here where we could just wait a few days, right? Let's say it's a situation where like this person just killed somebody in a motor vehicle accident, and we need to determine what their actual blood alcohol content is, and they are refusing to do a breathalyzer, or for some reason we can't do a breathalyzer. Like we need to get the blood. In that situation, yeah, at some point somebody has to get the blood, right? We got to figure out if this person was drunk when they hit the 3-year-old on the side of the road.
So just because I did a kind of a deep dive on this earlier today, in the case of actual crimes to other people, like if you hit someone DUI, if they suspect that you are in some way impaired operating machinery and someone else gets hurt, they do compel a warrant, and that warrant, they generically no longer take you to a hospital. They have techs at the jail that will do it, or they'll take you to an EMT, because EMTs and which work for the fire department, and the nurse, the techs at the jail can legally do those service, draw the blood and do all the testing, and that preserves the chain of evidence. But they're not bound by the same Hippocratic oath that doctors and some nurses are in hospitals, and so they don't run into that barrier like they do at this hospital. The problem they ran into at the hospital is the doctor said, no, there's no reason to do this. In our medical opinion, he'll just either poop it out, or in a couple of days, we'll go in and get it. There's no reason for this
You could have the same
impatience. There's
objection
no
for blood
reason
alcohol
for this.
level.
Yeah, there's no reason to do that.
You could say like, well, if I stick this person with a needle to draw blood, there's always the risk of infection, which there is.
Well,
in
that, there's always off cases, right? Like people who have what is that? I'm drawing a blank. It's where you bleed. You just bleed really easily.
Hemophiliac?
Yes, thank you.
Anemia.
Yeah, and you could have someone that
missing veins is the most common shit. That is a major fuck up, and that makes up a lot of medical malpractice cases.
Right,
What?
Go ahead. Sorry.
That's good. What about that other case that I brought up where the hospital is being asked to determine somebody's citizenship or whatever, and the hospital doesn't want to ask that question because they are afraid that it'll have a chilling effect on the community, and then people won't go to the ER anymore because they're afraid, and then people are harmed because of it. And so that church, that hospital, that Catholic run hospital, especially given the papal letter that came out recently, says that we're not going to do anything to harm members of the community in that way. They make that decision for themselves, not to ask that intake question. Federal government's going to come after them in some way, right? Like Trump wants compliance with these things. What do we do about that?
I mean, if it's a private hospital, I'm actually I gotta go. I'm gonna just say one thing on this. I got something that just came up. If it's a private hospital, then and they don't take money from the government, they can definitely tell them to go fuck off. Otherwise, if they're taking money from the government, they should probably follow it. But yeah, otherwise, I'm gonna rate it out to you, Prod. Thank you so much for having me. Sorry I have to leave early. Appreciate you having me.
I'm going, friend.
Yeah.
3 hours late last time and leaving early this time.
Well, it's been a wild last 2 weeks. It's been a wild last 2 weeks. I apapologize. Thank you so much.
Have a
Have
good
a good
one.
one.
We don't have Gibbs
Yeah, so-
consent to force them to stay.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
my
right.
thing is like, you have professionals that are meant to do these jobs, right? So this was kind of I had this argument before about like, if you see someone stealing, no, you didn't, because it's not your responsibility to the store, right? As a worker, if you're just a cashier, you're not a security guard, so you taking and assuming a risk upon yourself is not like worth it to you. There's no ROI to you. It's not like you're gonna get any benefit. So like in this same instance, it's like you want a hospital. I don't care if they're getting government money or not. The job that like a doctor or a nurse or the hospital staff is working is not ICE. They didn't sign up to be police. They didn't sign up to do immigration. They signed up to be doctors. That's what they're studied in. That's what they know. So like, yeah, to put like that extra responsibility on their head without the pay of that comes with that responsibility is absolutely ridiculous. One, and then two, like, yeah, you shouldn't be compelled to do someone else's job. We have entire agencies meant to find illegal immigrants, so on and so forth. Let them do their jobs. They can do their jobs.
That's also the case with my job, right? Like if I find out that one of my students' is parents are not here legally, they want to say that I should report to them to the government, and
Absolutely not.
I'm refusing to do it. It's a little bit easier for me now because I'm not working for public school anymore, but I was for a long time. And there were plenty of kids. Like I had kids that had straight A's, but their parents, they were dreamers, right? Their parents brought them here illegally when they were children, no fault of their own. And I couldn't get them FAFSA because they couldn't apply for FAFSA if they weren't citizens. But we have something called TAFSA, which is the Texas version of FAFSA, and it does not require that you be a citizen, which is interesting. And so I would use that to get them scholarships all the time.
Nice.
All the time.
Like my thing
But
is
now
like,
the government's going to try to stop people like me from doing that.
my thing is with the whole, like, if you see someone stealing, no, you didn't, so on and so forth. I understand that there's a communal aspect, right? You don't want your community to like be thieved, but there's like the second aspect of like when it comes to like this and comes to like illegal. There's, let's call it a 50-50 split. There's half of the country that says, oh, illegal immigrants need to be deported tomorrow, and then there's the other half that are like, no, we should just like work them into the system somehow in some way and get it faster. You can't just like force the other, like this half of people to just one, turn on their entire ethics, but two, once again, implement and take on a whole nother responsibility and another job without any ROI. Like there's no benefit to them. It's all just cost, like, and it's cost to their community. They believe.
I mean, in fairness, the hospital asks a shit ton of questions that I think are irrelevant, and I still answer them.
I answered
whether or
too.
not you think they're relevant isn't what we're asking. We're saying,
But
like,
my answer didn't matter because
yeah.
he said you have three options. You can say yes, you can say no, or you can say I choose not to say.
Yeah, whether or not.
And
you
if you
answer
say
doesn't
I
matter.
choose not to say, and the government gets that the information on that, then they're going to investigate you just for refusing to answer the question.
I'll give a real simple like example, like just imagine like a nurse asking a patient that's coming in, like, hey, are you an illegal, like, are you here illegally? And he runs out because he's like worried about ICE, pushes her over. Now she has like an ankle, like she hurts her ankle. This is a very like simple thing that
I wish
can happen, and like, hold on, wait.
I know that
some
Michael
crimes,
Phelps
though,
wishes
right?
he had that reach.
There's some crimes that I like. I
There's some
generally,
crimes.
I
Like being here
generally
illegally. Is
no,
that the
not
crime
that
that
one.
you're?
No, I'm talking about like We will agree there's some crimes that we would expect medical professionals to report to the police, right? I can think of
Honestly,
multiple that I think you would say yes to.
I'm in
Yeah,
favor of
yeah,
mandatory
yeah.
reporting for those types of crimes.
Yeah, so
Gibbs is not, I don't think.
well, I think everybody here would have to be right. The classic example, child abuse, right? If you find symptoms of child abuse,
Oh, did he
Uh,
freeze for
Did
anybody
he
else?
cut- Okay, I thought I cut out.
yeah.
That was
I'm
random.
not gonna disagree with him on that. It's just I don't.
Is
know.
Lactoid
There are people
frozen?
who- yeah.
Is
Yeah,
it me?
yeah.
That's great. Somebody ought to clip that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, well, I'm sure Lactoid will come back. He's having some sort of issue, on his end.
Well,
I was having
Prime,
issues
He was
earlier. I don't know
deported
what's
from the
up.
Discord.
Mm-hmm.
because I think you alluded to earlier of like because I think you were bringing up the question of like should the state be able to compel and I think you were leaning towards like there's some situations I was curious like is there an example of a situation that you can think of maybe not that like the state then now has the right to compel I understand for maybe not this crime but it seems like you were alluding to you have your line.
Well, yeah. I think we've already covered some of that ground where, you could compel that, like it. So if someone's just walking out, you can compel them to stop, because you have reasonable suspicion that they've committed a crime. You can compel them to. Hold on, let me bring Lactoid back in.
Welcome back.
sorry about that, guys. I don't know what
Yeah,
happened.
yeah, no worries,
He's God.
friend.
It's your quantum computer.
My computer's definitely
Mm.
not quantum.
It was purely
that was-
random.
that was
you
random.
Left the, yeah.
But
See,
yeah,
what just happened
like-
with me and Icon was a coincidence.
No such thing as coincidence.
So I think you should be able to compel someone who you find suspicious to stop and maybe interact with the police, right? Like that alone, that makes sense. I think you should be able to compel people to do things like pay taxes, to compel them to I don't know, follow rules and regulations. I think that there's like direct compulsion and then there's like indirect compulsion, right? Like there's like lots of laws that like you follow just cause like they exist, right? And you can argue that like them existing
Nudge
at
theory.
all, the fact that they even have a law, right? That's automatically comes with a level of force, a level of coercion that these things exist. And I think that's fine, right? It's fine that we have those laws, even if like you never interact with them, even if there's like not a credible threat that they'll be enforced if you broke them, right? Like that's that level of coercion, maybe, or compulsion is fine. And then there's more a direct path where like an agent of the state is interacting with you, and then they can tell you, all right, like give you a lawful order. I think lawful orders exist, right? And a lawful order in itself would come with a level of compulsion, or coercion, whichever one is best for this. Yeah, I think that's fine. But where's the limit?
Would it be
So,
more accurate to say, Prime? Would it be more accurate to say that truly the law can't compel you to do anything, but it can punish you for not doing what they want, right?
That's the
yeah.
same thing.
Yeah. So
Com-
that's what I was
compulsion's
getting at.
compulsion's very. I mean, compulsion in and of itself kind of ties back into that 13th Amendment thing that we.
unless you make someone a puppet.
Well,
You-
yeah. I think compulsion is like compulsion, like punishment for doing something or not doing something is what compulsion means. When people say like, oh, like the First Amendment, but you don't have you have the right to say what you want, but you don't have the right to be punished if you say the wrong thing. Well, no, that's exactly what freedom of speech means. You do have like you cannot be punished for saying the thing.
Freedom
That's
of
correct.
consequence.
Yeah,
There's
yeah. You
limits-
have
there are-
yes,
there are
you
limits
have
to free
freedom
speech.
from yes. There are some limits with the First Amendment, but outside of these limits, you are free of consequence, like of legal consequence for saying.
Yeah,
whatever
so you
you
can't
want.
say
Legal
that would be like
consequence.
saying
Wait. That's like the issue is like when you're saying that phrase, you mean legal consequence. When everyone else says that phrase, they mean consequence of like reality.
Yeah, I mean, people can not like you for saying the things that you say, but
But
that's
there are
not
also
like,
consequences to saying things that people don't like.
You're right, but when we're talking about the First Amendment, we're talking about like as it relates to government, right? Congress shall establish no law.
Even with
Kind of.
legal,
That's not how people use it. But like, go
E-
ahead, like how.
even with legal consequences, like that distinction is kind of meaningless because, you could just say you don't have to pick cotton for me, right? But it's illegal for you not to pick
Yeah.
cotton for me, right? So I'm gonna put, you're gonna get a bunch of lashes and then be
You're going to
put,
get whipped if you don't, right? I'm
in
not
a
saying you
cell,
have
right.
to, but
But you don't have to do it. You can choose to take the whippings instead. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
were having this conversation at the end of the panel last week. It's like, yeah, you should have the freedom to say whatever you want and do whatever you want, like so long as like you're not physically harming anyone. But it's like the reality of the situation is if you want to speak words, you're gonna have to deal with the consequences that come with them because like you're dealing with people in like a reality. Not everyone deals with things in a legal basis, and so like using the legal basis is like, yeah, you're right technically, but like try that outside in the real world, see how right
So-
you are.
Right,
So
and,
I-
and
I-
actually that
example
that
I
leads
gave
me to
regarding-
where I was
Yeah,
kind
you
of
cut off
wanting
right,
to.
right there for mandatory
right there.
reporting.
Okay,
started.
all right.
Yeah, so obviously I would agree on that, but it's just like I don't think that I searches and child abuse are two different things. But yeah, so that's like the only issue with the whole like freedom of speech, no freedom of consequence. It's like we don't mean legally when people are saying that. It's like
So let's.
Some people mean it legally.
yes, some,
good-
but the majority of people don't.
Grid wants to jump in, so I'm gonna let him do that, and then
Yeah,
we
just-
can go back to Lactoid so he can finish the point that he was making previously.
Yeah, just really quickly. So when we if it that actually kind of goes both ways because if an officer gives you what he considers to be a lawful order or compels you to do something and he's wrong, he loses his qualified immunity and can be sued. And so if I say no, I'm not going to do it, he is not, and I, because I know that he's not correct. Again, I can beat the rap, but I may not beat the ride. You understand what I'm saying? Is that if I feel like I'm right in denying an officer of the law something, if I feel like that there's no legal grounds for him to do that, and I say no, I'm not going to do it, as these doctors did, it's going to cost me money. It may cost me a night in jail. It may cost me tens of thousands of dollars in lawyers' fees. So I won't beat the ride, but I can beat the rap. I can make that officer sorry that he tried to compel me to do something.
You can win ultimately. And
But
I feel like
again,
you can
I
win at the
mean,
end.
so when we
articulate
talk about
pretty
compulsion and all of these things, it's great to say, well, you are compelled to because he can lock you up. Sure. But we're a nation of laws. In a totalitarian society, sure, you can lock me up, throw away the key, and you never hear from me again. But unfortunately, in our society, I get my day in court, and you better be right.
Yeah.
Lactoid.
I don't know if that always holds true in everything.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sometimes they're not right. I mean,
Right. Yeah,
Someone
sure.
was talking about O.J. Simpson earlier. That's a great example, I think, of where the jury got
I mean,
horribly,
I think there's
horribly wrong.
I think there's a problem with like perception, right? Because like you've asked this question before. It's like how many people do you think cops actually kill like a year? It's like people think 1,000.
Very
it's really,
small
like 12.
percentage.
Yeah, it's
And
a
so
really
it's
small
like
percentage.
the perception is that like I would say I would assume for like the average person that the perception is that most cops don't have good judgment and that like they're kind of working high stress jobs, low pay, and it's like they fuck up a lot. It's not that they fuck up sometimes; it's they fuck up more often than not. Or at least people feel like they are because they like the job description is protect and serve, and it
Not-
just feels like harassment of civilian at like every
Yeah,
turn of the like every turn of the way.
Now I
don't-
want to
don't-
throw something at lactoid. I mean, not
yeah, I don't
lactoid,
think I have stats
sociologic.
in front of me as to. I don't think these stats even exist because of how many like police interactions there are every single day.
It doesn't have to be
I
violent
don't-
interactions. Like I think
I'm
I
not
think,
talking about violent. I'm talking about just general police interactions. So like if a cop walks up and talks to you and asks you questions that they're wrong about, that's not going to be recorded. So I don't know like what percentage of the time cops are wrong. What I can tell you is that in my experience, when it comes to the police, they're not wrong more often than not.
so.
And juries actually tend to, in my experience, and from the experience of all the different attorneys I've talked to, cops make some of the most credible witnesses.
That's
to
not
a
even what I
jury.
mean. That's not even really what I mean. So I think like for the average person just living in like the suburbs or the city, whatever it may be, they feel like the cops are more of a harassment than they are a like service to the community. So like let's talk about municipals, right? Municipal tickets, right? Minuscule speeding tickets are like rolling a stop sign and so on and so forth.
Sure.
Like I rolled a stop sign at 3 in the morning, or I didn't roll. I turned right on a red at like 3 in the morning once when there are no cars in the street. A cop pulls me over. I'm not drunk. No, everything's fine, but he still writes me a ticket. He's like, well, because the law's the law. It's like, I don't feel like the cops are protecting and serving. I feel like they're just harassing people for money. And so like the average person kind of has a bad taste in their mouth, which is police in general. They're like, hey, these people are kind of just like, it's like people relate them to gangs or the mafia, right? They're like, they're just
Sure.
kind of running around the streets and collecting money. So we already have a perception of these people that like they're not doing their job. They're kind of just lackeys, and it's like bad, right? So it's like that's kind of the issue when it comes to us wanting to like trust people's judgment, or saying like we should trust the cops' judgment or police's judgment, because it's like we don't believe that their judgment is to be trusted.
No,
So
I
like
know. I don't. I think that you're right. There's some people like that. I think that most of the time, the people who say ACAB and say fuck the police, etc., or even people that aren't that extreme. People are just like,
yeah, it
I
doesn't
think I think it's bullshit that these highway like these pirates take my money on the highway. Again, even those people when they're on a jury, like they're like, yeah, they don't they're not they don't usually seem to challenge the veracity of when a cop says something. And the reality is because the problem with that is not that the cop is wrong factually for pulling you over. Oftentimes these people are speeding and they know it. The problem is we just think it's bullshit that, wow, 7 miles over and you're pulling me over, go fuck yourself. That's what it is. They don't like the cops are doing the job that they're doing, as opposed to the fact that they're committing some kind of overt fraud. Now, I will agree that there are circumstances that cops do have a reputation. This was especially true before body cams became more popular, and in some places where they're not popular. This is a continuing allegation, which is part of the reason why I think body cams should be on all cops.
Oh, I love that show,
Drug,
Audit the Auditor. That's
drug
fucking great.
planting. Yeah, drug planting, right? You planted that, right? And there's some high profile events where cops would plant drugs on people. That does a lot to undermine community trust for sure. But again, by and large, cops are generally trusted for the truth value of what they're saying, because the cops are most of the time a somewhat disinterested party, right? If you get off, their pay doesn't go down, right? They're
And I
fine.
think that's dependent on the community that you ask, right? Obviously, if you're like doing like America as a whole, right? But then if you start getting into like certain communities and different communities, right? Like wealthier communities, yeah, sure, they're not really going to have a problem with the cops. Cops seem to do our bidding. We pay them. Our taxes go to this, like built-in security system for us, right? But like lower income communities or people that like, don't see their taxes working for them necessarily. They're probably like more untrustworthy, and I would say that there's more
Okay,
like
Let me put a bow on it.
I could jump in
Last
here for
sentence.
just 1 second.
One last sentence. I agree with you. There's problems, but if you go to court on a traffic ticket and it's only the cop said you were going this fast and you were saying you weren't going that fast, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be paying the ticket.
No, what I'm saying is like it's reasonable that in certain communities that like the hospital workers don't necessarily trust the cops' judgment. Whereas in other communities, maybe they have more reason to trust the cops' judgment. And so it's like when we're talking about like, should the courts be able to compel workers to do like a certain task on the behalf of the police? It's like, well, I mean, that's kind of where the issues come in. Is like, I think a majority of communities, especially when it comes to like hospitals, right? Like I feel like lawyers are typically like adversary to cops, right? The lawyers and cops don't necessarily get along, as far as I can tell.
No, I mean, no, we're
at least defense lawyers.
I don't think even defense lawyers, like lawyers and cops, are kind of with part of the overall system, and cops recognize that.
Yeah, let me. So would it
surprise? Hospital staff isn't necessarily like buddy.
Sorry,
so
I just one move ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
So would it surprise you that there are jurisdictions in the United States that will not hire you as a police officer if you have a high IQ?
I've heard that. I don't think that's true.
I actually have the ruling in front of me. So in New London, Connecticut, specifically, a man actually sued the police department because he scored too high on his exam, which would have been a 1/3 equivalent IQ of 125, and they do not interview candidates who score higher than 27 on their test. He scored a 33 on their battery of tests.
27 IQ.
not 27 IQ, but 27 on the test, which probably equates to like a 9,500, something like that. If 33 is a 127, I'm just extrapolating a little bit there.
Yeah.
And the courts ruled that is okay for the departments to do because they judge everybody by the same standard. Every person hired is judged by that standard.
And they justified it that this is too high of a score, or like was it?
No, they
essentially
justified it
like-
as they judge everybody by the standard. Their standard is if you score higher than 27 on their test, which is probably the equivalent of 100, 110 IQ maybe. If you get around 125, which is what this guy got, they don't even interview you.
Yeah, that's
I can never be a cop. God damn it.
Weed out the Smarties.
I looked it up. Apparently, you're right. Now, keep in mind, the news story you're referring to was from 2000. I don't know.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
I've heard,
I had another lawyer send me that today.
No, wait. I'm looking at some stuff from more recent. This is 2021.
Yeah.
So the cited reason is that if they're too high IQ, they might get bored of the police.
yeah, they
work
might
and
not stick
leave
around. Yeah,
After all that
Yeah, but
training, which is
that's
hilarious.
garbage. Come on.
just like if you're overqualified for a
That's
job.
the biggest bullshit I've ever heard in my life.
What if like I intentionally? Would it be fraud if I like intentionally fucked up my tests
If you
and
dumbed
hired
it
as a-
down.
Yeah, I dumb myself down for the test. Technically, that would be fraud, right?
Isn't a prerequisite for like the FBI or CIA or whatever is like to be a cop first?
No, actually, the FBI usually
I
hires
actually-
accountants.
I know the CIA is full of Mormons because you can't have like done drugs and shit if you want to be part of the CIA, and that those people just don't do any touching.
And
stuff.
nepotism.
Okay, all right. Well, I got a place for me.
You're a Mormon?
Well, no, I don't do drugs.
Oh,
Yeah. But in any case, Mormon. Wow. Yeah,
It's more likely you're getting Mormon than the CIA, I guess. Is the
yeah, it might have actually really. Oh my god. But so getting back to the topic at hand, it seems like we've been all over the place, which is fine. I think we've been touching on some different things here. But you know, like what can the state compel you to do, right? And there's probably at least you know as I try to put this together now, probably like three interlocking categories, right? That are intentional for one another. That like like
Eric
examine
W,
the
that is
situation, we gotta
funny
wonder if there's enough
as
of one or
hell.
the other.
Basically, to
to warrant
white
like,
Asian
compulsion,
majority
right? So
force.
one would be
That
a threat to the state.
racist,
Another
but I'll
one would
allow
be,
it. That's
like,
funny
a
as hell.
threat,
Thanks, Eric. Really appreciate that.
to public safety. And
And Smoking Spaceman comes in with
the last one, maybe like a
he'd rather
threat
have a bunch
to,
of Sherlock Holmes like officers than a bunch of
the
idiots. I
individual.
agree 100%.
Like if there's an individual person who like who could be the suspect in and of themselves, right? Like that person. Maybe those three things. Like at some point, like the threat to public to the state, right? It could be so high, right? Like, oh, a coup is about to happen. That yes, they can compel you to do maybe some wild shit. That might make sense, right? And in public safety, there could be like a nuke, right? That's gonna go off. Like, and if that's gonna happen, well, it'd be okay if like the officer, like, you know, like they're trying to get into a warehouse and the warehouse worker is like, do you have a warrant? He's like, fuck your warrant. Like, you know, like compel him very forcefully to like to open up the warehouse.
and that is an exception, by the way. Like if you see some like dragging a kid into a house and they've been kidnapped, you don't have to wait for a warrant. You can just storm in there.
Exactly. Yeah. Like and there might be other criteria that I'm just not considering, right? But if you think about the balance between these, right? These concerns, I think that would make sense, like to come up with some sort of formula to say, not like, you know, exact formula, but to look at these things and judge, are there threats to these pillars, right? Like, and if so, then like it makes sense to escalate like the amount of compulsion or force that the cops and the state in general can exert on the citizenry or whoever's within their borders. Yeah. Well, what do you guys think with that?
Well, yeah, I'm curious. I don't necessarily disagree. Like, there is some sort of threshold. I'm just curious how you would potentially deal with like the hypothetical that I gave to Lactoid in terms of like if you're trying to get someone's blood alcohol level and like no medical professional is willing to comply. Like, are you willing to compel a medical professional to like force them?
Okay, sure.
I lean towards
So
no, personally.
so let's plug that in, right? So threat to the suspect, right? The person that like that has the attention of the state, public safety, and then the state itself, right? Like there is very little threat to um public safety if you don't immediately get uh well actually there is some threat
He
to
ran
public
over a
safety.
child.
You ran over a child. Well, no, but there's no future threat, right?
If this guy gets back out, there's a future threat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because now he knows he just has to like not comply with the sobriety test, and he could get blackout
We just ban
by the
drinking.
elementary school every time.
If we ban
Uh,
drinking, that solves the problem.
Oh,
Alright,
sure.
great.
Okay.
Muslim
Yeah, so
response.
there's very little threat to public
Sharia, baby.
safety. And there but there's no threat to the state. There is all right, I'm gonna readjust it. Okay, I'm gonna readjust it. Little threat to the state, almost no possible threat to the individual, assuming a medical professional draws blood, because you can fuck up a person if you like do that badly. Actually, there's a reason why we have trained people who are trained to do that. And there could be a moderate threat. Could be a moderate threat to public safety. There now, but maybe okay, but the compulsion isn't actually on. Now that I'm thinking about it, the compulsion isn't on the individual, like the person who possibly ran over these kids, right? Like what's in question is the nurse, right, or whoever
Yeah, the medical
that's
professional.
going to draw the blood, and it seems like low, right? Like there's not yeah, plugging a third party into the formula, it feels like it doesn't rise to a level where I would have to force this individual, especially if there are other alternatives. Like if this is the only person who can do this particular job, and there is a reasonable threat that this person will go out back on the road, right? Like we'll have to take the handcuffs off of him, right? Hand back his keys. Really gonna go right back on the road. Okay, that'd be different.
The sea of children.
Yeah, the sea of children's outside, right? There's gonna be there's
School's out, baby. 90
yeah.
miles an hour.
There's a,
Just having a good
like
time, just boys being boys.
those like Sesame Street parades, like you go to Sesame Street, like the place, right, the theme park, right, and like that's just happens to be like the street that he's driving down, and like there's the parade of kids on the side of the road, and yes, okay,
That should be very illegal. Yes.
right, and he's in he's in one of those ridiculous SUVs, huge SUVs where you can't see the kids in front of you any which way, right? So yeah, the high threat
This
there.
is literally what Daryl Brooks did, but
Yeah,
with grandmothers, right?
Yeah. Oh, you mean the one who went through the parade? Yeah.
He
that was-
ran over like a bunch of people that were part of the dancing grannies,
ton.
like they were elderly
Yeah.
people, and he just killed a bunch of them. Yeah, it's
A
fucked up.
fuck ton of people he killed. It was crazy. Yeah.
They were low risk though, grannies.
But anyway, so
they were low risk to society, I would expect.
but anyway,
Daryl Brooks not so much.
So plugging it all in, yeah, I think that like to compel this individual person being that person of the medical staff, that doesn't seem like it meets my threshold. If it's like, well, we have to draw this person's blood because it's suspected that he is some sort of like foreign terrorist and they're introducing like an incredibly dangerous pathogen to the United States, right? And like they're using his body as the medium to do so, then yeah, maybe we're gonna
What
use
if it was
like,
Paul
we
Blart
need
who
you to do
suspected
this.
him? Paul Blart suspects him
The
of
mall
this.
He wasn't a real
Yeah.
cop. He was a mall cop.
Yeah, but I mean, their security, they call the cops, right?
Yeah,
there
Paul
we go.
Blart can call somebody
Yeah,
who can then come and do the search.
and then the
okay?
cops listen to Paul Blart's suspicion, and then they arrest the guy, and then they take him to the hospital, and they're like, "Hey, listen, this guy's suspected to be a foreign terrorist with a deadly thing," and Prime's just over here like, "Yeah, fucking."
Yeah. If Paul Blart has no evidence then they shouldn't do the search. If Paul Blart happens to have like pretty compelling evidence to suggest that this guy's carrying a bioweapon, then yeah, I want the cops to search this guy.
How much evidence would you need to convince? Like, what would convince you?
Look, first of all, some level. Let's start with that, okay? Paul
A
Blart
picture?
tells Paul Blart says, "Hey, look, here's like a picture or camera evidence. This is like a glowing piece of uranium. Look
Here's
at it.
this Uzbekistanian article.
This
with
is a
this
highly
picture right
qualified
here.
mall cop who's conducting.
It's glowing.
Uzbek-
Look, if somebody in public is shoving anything up their ass, I think that's sufficient to call the cops and have them come investigate. Seriously, why are you in public shoving something up your ass?
Oh,
ever?
wait. Lactoid, actually, there's a girl who is on Instagram
shoves-
or TikTok. I can't, whatever it is. She
We know what
has
kind of
a-
girl
she
that
has a-
is.
She
All
has a
right,
dildo, and she goes in public and she like throws it on like the wall or whatever it may be, and she like performs.
I've seen those on Twitter. On Twitter, not on OnlyFans.
that's illegal,
Explain.
right? Like that's
Whoa,
illegal,
whoa,
right?
whoa, whoa. It's not going in her butt.
No, but it's going in her mouth and she's
In
performing
her
like a
mouth.
sexual
Yeah,
act. Right? Like,
it probably should be illegal, actually.
Explain.
Right, like-
Sorry. Explain what this
It's
is.
a giant dildo. She throws it on the ground in public and then just starts deep throating it. Like,
yeah,
in front of
or like the wall, or like in the library, like wherever.
Oh,
it's-
like
yeah.
she sticks it to something,
Yeah,
right? Like
it's
what
one
has
of
the
the
suction
ones
cup
with
at the
suction
end?
in
Yeah, and it's an
Yeah.
actual dildo. And,
And then
she's
you-
like,
and
just deep
she's
throwing
like-
it. Yeah, right there in
I've
public.
never seen this before. It sounds exciting. So hun, like actually that's I have never heard of this. But now I'm actually a little bit curious as to where you guys stand on this, right? So
Kids in the street. Yeah.
okay, there's no kids,
Also
right? So
kids
like
online.
we are.
If there's no kids, then it shouldn't be illegal. If
I
there's
guess, yeah.
kids, then you should get a ticket for that. Come on.
Yeah, a ticket would be. I wouldn't be mad at that.
Okay, what do you hold on? Let's ask Great, a real conservative. What he thinks about this, right? So apparently I'm warning, right? I'm not sure if you're aware of this, that there's an individual out there who's taking one of those, suction cup dildos and sticking out in public, right? Like going in public, like slamming it somewhere, and then
Isn't like New York.
filleting the dildo,
Yeah.
right? Now if she does this and there are no children around, do you think she should suffer consequences for that?
Are we talking about in public, like in a mall? Or are we talking about?
Isn't, like, yeah, New York,
Yeah.
like a CVS.
No, well, hold on, but before then, let's escalate it, right? Let's say she does in a bar, right?
In a bar?
She has.
Yeah.
Send link the.
I mean, I've seen drunk people do a lot of stupid
A
shit in
bar
bars.
would be fine. If she did it in a bar where there's no kids, I got no problem.
Yeah, I've
Can
seen
you
people do
link
a
the
lot of
video?
really stupid shit in bars. If we're talking about like at a restaurant, that I think the problem is that at least in the state of Tennessee, you get into the public indecency range, and there could be an issue there.
Do you think that's indecent, like publicly? Do you think so?
I'm sorry?
Do you think that like qualifies for public indecency? Like
If
you
you're
personally?
filleting a fake dildo, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think it
Oh,
does.
I'm just asking.
I think the test here is like, if she did that shit in an elementary school or a Chuck E. Cheese, would we be okay with it? Obviously not. And so if that's the case, that's usually a good barometer of like, well, maybe she shouldn't be doing this in front of kids.
There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things I think you shouldn't like do at a Chuck. There's a lot of like Fashion Nova and Shein outfits I think you shouldn't wear at Chuck E. Cheese.
Hold on, before hold on.
You shouldn't wear Sheen ever.
Yeah, it's pretty shitty actually.
First
But
of
hold on,
all, you just
two
have to
things.
find the
First,
good shops. You haven't found the right shops.
two things. First, Sean on YouTube, thank you for gifting one membership to someone. I don't know who it is. It doesn't tell you who you gifted towards. Okay, well,
Really? Huh.
Oh no, yeah, no, it actually does. I guess to Drew, to a person named Drew. Well, shout out to Drew. And then Lawson Harrison, always a homie, gifted $10, American dollars. The ideal outcome when the moral right is the legal wrong is for a cop to do the right and be heard in court. Or I guess do the right thing and be heard in court after the fact. Okay. I doubt a jury would slam a cop for an unlawful entry to stop a nuke. Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. Lost in that at some point, right? There's a risk to the individuals, risk to the individual, risk to the public, risk to the state. That's just so compelling, so overriding that Yeah, but the thing is, right? Just to be clear, like this was. Do you remember that old show 24? Right? Like,
Yes.
conservatives like love that show. To be fair, at the start, everyone loved that show.
Yeah, everybody loved
at
that
the
show.
very least. But it became like a big thing in conservative circles because like they treated all those situations as if like there was a bomb going off, right? They literally had like points where the bomb was about to go off. You know, you had to like get the information out of the bad guys, and so like you had to like kick their asses. And this is a big criticism of the show because it because especially in a post 9/11 America, like people were under the impression that like this was a thing that would happen all the time, right? Or that just like beating someone up, right, would actually give you like correct information, right?
Was
And so
Batman
it
justified when he beat up Joker
Batman justified when he beat up Joker.
in The Dark Knight?
Uh, why is he beating up Joker?
Remember?
Because he's
Have you seen
Joker.
The Dark Knight?
Depends on which one. So you're talking about the movies. I'm talking about the. I think
I'm talking about the movie The Dark
Um,
Knight. The movie The Dark
I'm
Knight.
gonna
Yeah, one
have to
time he beats
jump
up
off,
Joker in the
guys. It's
comics.
been great.
Like in the
I hate to do
interrogation-
it while not everybody's here, but I got to jump off. Prime, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Have a good
It's a
one.
good conversation tonight. Really appreciated it.
Yeah.
I hope Scott feels better. I did harass him to come on, but there was no budging him. So sorry.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. But yeah, Scott is also like a person with health issues, so it makes it a little bit difficult sometimes for him. But shout out to our friend Scott. Shout out to Grid. Thanks for coming through.
Yeah, you guys
Okay,
have a
great.
great rest of
Well.
your night. I really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely.
Thanks. That was rough, ladies and gentlemen. That was rough. You know, normally I have a little bit more that's the word I'm looking for. Normally I can hang with those guys better, but I think it's only because Scott's there and I can and Scott and I kind of can play off of each other and all of that. So tonight it was terrible. It was terrible. But once I got paid $5 whole to bail, that was it. I mean, I got to do what the audience demands, right? Damn, son, that was rough, man. I got to be honest. It was tough. Let's see what's going on over at the Gematria thing. That's pretty fucking funny. I actually think I'm just going to drop off for the night. I'm going to go in. I'm going to let me find my thing here. Go hang out with my wife for a little while, just chill out, have a good time. That was rough, man. Like normally look, those guys are bad, right? Like there's no doubt they're just bad. But normally they're a little bit more entertaining. But once Gibbs bailed, it ain't coming back. With no Scott, no Gibbs, you're just not coming back from that. You're just not. I know you want to, but you're just not. You're not coming back from it. Sorry. So yeah, I'm gonna raid you guys over to Sarah's channel. You're probably already over there, but that's okay. We'll get that done here in just 1 second, and I'm probably I hang out for a little bit, but I'm like 90% sure I'm just gonna call it a night and have a good time, man. You guys have been great tonight. This wasn't even a debate. Everybody agreed right out of the they dodged, they ducked, they dipped, they did everything except engage on the actual topic. And Ico really wanted to make it about Trump and the about the filling out the form. It's a box. It's checking a box on a sheet. That's all. So anyway, I'm going to end this stream. You guys go over to Sarah's and hang out. It'll be cool. And we'll see. We'll catch you on. We'll catch you Wednesday night. Catch you Wednesday night. You guys have a great rest of your evening. Get off my lawn.